Hi everyone and welcome back to National League Lowdown. This is going to be a long one, so strap yourselves in. I'm joined by Louis. How are you, mate?
Yeah, well, good. Thanks, Dan. Looking forward to recapping on everyone else's season apart from our own, given how dreadful it was. So, yeah, looking forward to this.
Yeah, definitely, mate. Craig, how are you, mate?
Yeah, looking forward to writing the school report for some of these teams. There'll be some A's, there will be some B's, and there will most certainly be some F's.
Yeah, there's a few F's, I think. Mark, how are you, mate?
Hello, how everybody. Judge not, lest ye be judged, and we are going to do some judging, even though, oh boy, you'll just have to wait and see.
Judge not or ye be judged. That's going to be on Mark Sharpley's merch if you join our breakfast club.
Absolutely.
So when the merch
$2.99,
comes out,
an absolute bargain, if I do say so myself.
that's got to be on there. So yeah. So yes, it's going to be our season review. We're going to be going through the teams. So we're going to be starting with who we've ranked the lowest, who we've graded the lowest. Obviously, individually we've marked them, but then as a podcast, Craig's worked it all out as to on an average where they finish. So we'll get started. So first up, probably it's bad that they're up first. Eastleigh. Obviously, you can see there I've gave them an F. I think they're massively underachieved. I had them in the playoffs at the start of the season. I think other than if it wasn't for Aaron Blair's goals, I think they go down. To be honest, I think really poor from them. Louis, what did you make of Eastleigh this season?
Yeah, I gave them an F. I had them in the playoffs at the start of the season. I think most of us did. And I think that says it all in terms of how their season has gone. I mean, even considering the season before, you look, they finished 13th, which I think would have been a disappointment from them. And then to drop to 17th and to be in a relegation battle for them is just, yeah, it's not good at all. With the amount of money that gets pumped in by Stuart Donald down there, he's got high expectations for the club. I think it's to get them in the Football League for the first time, and it's just not worked out. And when you look at their squad at the beginning of the season, you have the likes of Lundstrom, Aaron Pierre, who's experienced, Nick Townsend, been in goal for Newport in the Football League. Obviously, Aaron Blair, as you mentioned, top goal scorer in the National League South, or one of the top goal scorers. So there was high hopes at the start of the season, and it just never really got going. And I think, as you say, Aaron Blair was at 17 or 18 goals this season. If they're gone, they go down. I think that game against Brackley they had, where they scored in the 96th minute, if they don't win that game, they would have been, on the cusp of relegation going into the final day against Scunthorpe away, and they only won that really because Scunthorpe threw their toys out of the pram because they knew they were in the playoffs. So I think from that point of view, a really really poor season for them. Expectations quite high, and they've gone out with a whimper in that sense. And I think they're lucky in some respects that there were more teams worse than by the table, but I think there were only just four teams worse than them that finished in those relegation places.
Yeah, definitely, mate. Definitely. Mark, what did you make of Eastleigh this season?
They had high hopes, we had high hopes. There goes another rubber tree plant. Absolutely awful. My God, I mean, talk about pulling the wool over people's eyes. I mean, they had the signings. It got so much excitement, with the fans. It certainly got us excited here. I mean, we were all willing them on for a playoff position. And as Louis rightly pointed out, they were lucky to not go down. If it wasn't for Aaron Blair, then yeah, they honestly, I've never been so underwhelmed by any one team that's promised so much. Just dreadful. But oh no, if I don't understand how that team with so much potential could perform so badly. I mean, they went 13th the season before, apparently improved the squad and got worse. How does that happen? I just don't understand it. I really don't understand it. Massive improvement is going to have to be needed. I mean, it's stating the obvious, but my goodness gracious me, that was one to forget from Eastleigh.
Definitely. And Craig, I'll come to you. Obviously, you've worked out the average for the podcast, but obviously you didn't really need to on this one. I think we were pretty much unanimous, apart from Callum. But what did you make of Eastleigh this season?
Yeah, I think it was a season that promised so much, which ultimately failed to deliver. Three different managers throughout the time there as well. Obviously, starting with Kelvin Davis, he got sacked pretty early. I think there was someone who caught their second podcast of the season saying he'd gone. It took a little bit longer than that for that to happen, but then once he'd gone, they got in Scott Bartlett, who was flying with Western-super-Mare, and it didn't quite work out as well before Richard Hill took it for probably about the last 10 to 12 games of the season. ultimately done enough to keep them up. But a team with their aspirations staying up is not good enough. They should have done so much more this season. We sung their recruitment praises. I think everyone had them 5th or 6th in the league, and to be fair, they were just shocking throughout. And Matt Gray, ex-Sutton manager, obviously their next season, he's got a hard task. And as we spoke to Chris Agata in the week, recruitment. It's 9/10 of the job this day, and Eastleigh looked like they got theirs right, but my God, didn't they get it wrong except for Aaron Blair.
Yeah, like we say, big shout out to Aaron Blair. I think he's the main reason that they stayed up. Otherwise, that it would have been an even bigger disaster. So next up, I don't want to use the word disaster, but I will. Going from one disaster to another, Morecambe. Obviously, we know before the season started there was off the field issues. You know, they nearly went out of existence. We've done multiple podcasts on it, so there was underlying situations. But obviously, the appointment of Ashjaval Singh, everything like that, the being the best team, playing the best football by the end of October, and they definitely weren't. They were probably the easiest F I gave out of everybody for this season. Mark, what did you make of Morecambe?
Well, I think Eastleigh should be grateful that somebody was even worse than them. I mean, Morecambe, wow, it was a carry-on film brought to life. I mean, awful, awful, just awful. You know, I can't really put it any other way. I mean, when you boast about going to have the best footballing side in England, you better back it up. And God, Jesus H. Christ, they just did not do it. I mean, it showed the naivety of the Morecambe board as well, because if they could not see what was happening in front of them and going, well, maybe we get one win every month, not good enough, not good enough. It was passionless, you know. I mean, I saw Morecambe fans on social media wishing they didn't have a club. It was for that. I mean, they were the main people. They've been the main people who have been absolutely let down by this season. Some of them may have cared. I mean, Jack Nolan being the player of Morecambe season, but those fans were just suddenly let down. I mean, some of the off the field decisions were questionable. They left it far too late to get rid of one of the biggest dreamers in football. Let's be honest. I mean, how could you take him seriously after that best footballing team in England statement? My God. But yeah, too little, too late, and now they find themselves in a very tough situation because the National League North is getting more and more full-time teams next season. They won't have it easy, but they've not got anybody else to blame but themselves.
The one thing I would say for Morecambe is the one thing I do think they have got right in recent weeks is Adam Lakeland. I think they've probably got that right, but I think that's probably the only decision they've got right since they've took over. So that tells you everything for this season. Craig, what did you make of Morecambe this season?
Yeah, I was torn between giving them an E or an F just because of how much turmoil they had off the pitch to start the season. Obviously, they started, I think it was 3 or 4 games later than everybody else. Obviously, signed players in about 5 days for them first couple of games, and August, September time is absolutely relentless. So I was prepared to give them a little bit of slack, but then all the comments that were made and maybe a bit of naivety with how hard the National League was going to be for them. They thought they could maybe just get through it and finish mid-table this season, and then next season they'll fly back out of it again. And they just left everything too late. Would Jim Bentley have kept them up? Maybe, maybe not. If it had got longer, with all the off-field troubles they had. But one thing he did do is obviously he gave them a bit more of an identity going forward. So, and he's obviously going to be staying on under Adam Lakeland. So yeah, I was torn between an E and F, but ultimately the decision to keep Ashford Singh Howe as long as they did, the amount of goals they shipped this year, meant that the likes of Jack Nolan, even Chris Popoff, who came in, had a good spell, got 7 goals. Obviously, not enough as your main striker, but you could see that he's got a bit about him. Wasn't enough to obviously keep them up, and the fragilities of their battle for stay against relegation. And yeah, I think an F's probably fair, but I don't completely disagree with Callumsy because of all the issues they had earlier in the season. But let's just hope for them, even if they don't come up for the National League North, they just have a plain sailing season. Just enjoy the football. Hopefully for them, there'll be some better times ahead.
Yeah, hopefully just give the fans something to cheer because they've not had much to cheer this past few years. Louis, what did you make of Morecambe?
Yeah, I think it's been summed up really well by the lot of you. I think any side that gets back-to-back relegations is obviously going to have a poor rating. I think it's as much a rating that reflects the off-field issues as it does the on-field issues. I think you could argue that they did come into the season with one, maybe two hands tied behind their back. They got, the recruitment in that they could get in. I just think that at the end of the day, they went down with a whimper. In some fairness, I know Jim Bentley did pick it up slightly, and he did get a few results, and obviously got the 5-0 win at our place, which I wouldn't forget in a hurry. But they just never really looked at any point particularly like they were going to be in with a fight, and I think it was 2 or 3 weeks with the season ending that they went down. Obviously, they won at Rochdale as well, which was an incredible result for them. But it's a bunch of players that were individuals rather than a team. Jim Bentley did his bit to bring them together, but ultimately, yeah, an F on the field and an F off the field, and they'll just hope to turn it upside down next season.
Yeah, and I do think they've got off to a good start with Adam Lakeland for next season. So, we say they've had a push, but I do wish them all the best because the fans deserve better than what they've been served up. They've been through a lot. So good luck to them next season. Next up, Craig, I'm going to come straight to you. It's your boys, Braintree. I obviously graded them an F. I know there's a couple of E's in there as well. Craig, what did you make of your season?
Yeah, I like the first game. We could top of the league after that one.
Well, yeah, you never mentioned it.
Yeah, we've talked about this being the long past podcast we ever do. I think if I start ranting, I won't stop. So I'll try not to get into it too much. But so many off-field issues towards the end of the season. One win in our last 14. We really went down with a bit of a whimper. I remember being on here probably 11 months ago now and saying I'm not overly convinced with our recruitment. I think Lewis Walker might be the best option, but the likes of Babbage, Kamara, even Tommy Smith, they might not be the options that we need. But ultimately, Steve went into the transfer window in the summer last season with one hand behind his back. He lost his best player to Peterborough. We'd lost all our loans that we'd had success with, and I had a feeling we were going to struggle. What I didn't see was how many off-field issues we'd have towards the end of the season with players now not getting paid their wages. It is a job for them at the end of the day. If you're not getting paid, how are you going to get motivated to get up for your job as much as you can, kind of thing? So I've got nothing but respect for most of the players there who I think gave 100%, but ultimately either weren't good enough or we were blighted by injuries and off-field issues as well. There were so many issues that I won't get into now, and I don't think it's my place to get into. But yeah, we showed moments when we beat Truro. I was like, brilliant, this could be the start of something, but there were so many false dawns in there. We took the lead against Sutton, conceded 94th minute. We drew with Brackley when we should have won. We lost 4-1 to Wealdstone at home. There was just so many moments that I was like, can this kickstart our season? And it was obviously summed up by drawing 0-0 on against Woking, which got us relegated. It just confirmed the inevitable in that sense. And we drew 7 games at home 0-0, and probably only one of them is a good result, and that's the Forest Green one. Our home form the year before was spectacular. We beat Barnet, we beat York, we beat Forest Green, we beat Rochdale. We beat all. I think Southend and Oldham were the only 2 teams out the top 7 to beat us at home. This year, we didn't beat any of them. Now, I know a lot of the teams down the bottom were the same because the gulf between the bottom and the top is probably the biggest it's ever been this season, in my opinion. So teams are getting 108 points and teams are going down with 40. We talked about Eastleigh a minute ago. Their points total would have got them relegated last season. Braintree were about 12 behind that. So it really shows how poor we were. And yeah, who knows what's going to happen for us next season? Because right as we speak, we're under transfer embargo. There was potentially some good news. Obviously, Tommy Smith's gone to the World Cup, and you can earn about 10k a day, I believe, from the players being there. But that looks like that's just going to cover debts now, rather than actually being a springboard towards a competitive budget in National League South. So, could be an F again next season, unfortunately for us. But yeah, I won't dwell on it too much because if not, everyone will be listening to me just drone on about Braintree for the next 2 hours, and nobody wants that, unfortunately, and I don't particularly want to do it either.
No, I think you covered it well, mate. I do. I think there was a few moments. I think we talked about it with Chris Agate, didn't we, on our interview, and we were saying about that game with Sutton. If he just hung on, things could have been a little bit different. And it's all those little sliding door moments that you just think
the
maybe.
Gateshead game,
Yeah,
better side, couldn't score. Keaton Ward bends one in from 25 yards in the
yeah,
last minute, and they win 1-0.
yeah. The Carlisle game when we came to your place, what was 1-1, and then we got a scrappy goal at the end. Just little things like that. Where I think I messaged you on the day saying, yeah, I think that's when you know you're going down, when that kind of thing's going against you and stuff. So we'll wait and see what happens over the summer. But
Yeah, I think it goes against everyone once or twice in a season, but it happened to us 9 or 10 times.
yeah, exactly. And sometimes fate's just against you, isn't it? Louis, what did you make of Braintree this season?
Yeah, so I've obviously given them an E compared to grades F. I think expectation going into the season, if you were fifth from bottom, you'd have been delighted, I think. So there's that aspect of it as well. And when you consider last season, I guess punching above your weight in some respects, finishing 17th. So it's one of those things. And I don't think, as you said, you replaced the players that you lost. I don't think you replaced Jermaine Francis. I don't think the Lisby twins were replaced well enough. So I think that aspect of it put you on the back foot. And then when you consider the sliding doors moments that we've spoken about, you obviously mentioned the Sutton game, but I think the Scunthorpe at home one as well was one that you look back on, and there was I think it was a penalty shout in the game that turned one way, turned the other. And if those sliding doors moments do go in your favour, then you're closer towards the end of the season, and those supposed dead rubbers at the end of the season maybe don't happen as much because there's a bit more emphasis in your team. So that's why I've given them an E in that sense. But yeah, it's a pretty dismal season in some respects, and not a positive outlook going forward for the club going forward. So that's why I've given them an E instead of an F. But yeah, not a great season obviously because relegation happened.
Yeah, one player I obviously forgot to mention, but I've mentioned him enough throughout the year, is Marty Marsh-Miranda. The minute he was sold and not really replaced was when I started to think, right, we're done kind of thing. Zuziak came in, looked kind of lively in there, obviously got on the bench for Arsenal later in the season in the Champions League semi-final, but he wasn't the same profile. And Vennings looked a shadow of himself. He wasn't great for the whole season, but he looked even worse when he didn't have Miranda next to him. So yeah, we'll see what happens next season. And up the National League South, always preferred it anyway.
Mark, anything to add on Braintree?
Oh, well, at least they were top for a game. But the thing is with Braintree, once you sort of expect them to be in that little lower echelon, if you will, and sometimes they were getting some handy results. But the one thing that let them down, and I did say it at the time, which ultimately, once they got into a rhythm of not scoring enough goals, they got stuck in the quicksand and then began to sink. What I think it was. Was it only 3 draws in 14, Craig?
Yeah, the last 14 had 3 draws.
That's what they're on doing, but too many zeros on in the scoring columns. I mean, yeah, they needed a big time goal scorer. There was a lot of J. Emmanuel Thomas signing, and it was just a waste of a wage, really. If he got paid at all, I wouldn't have paid him. But yeah, you sort of thought they might have just got out of it, but as I say, once they got into this funk, if you will, they never got out of it. So it's at least they tried.
Yeah, definitely. Lack of goals was a big problem, wasn't it? Next up, we're moving from the Fs to the Es, I believe, which is Aldershot. But I will say I did give them. Oh no, I gave them an E. I thought I gave them an F. There's another team I gave an F to, but for Aldershot, for me, the only reason I didn't give them an F was just for when John Coleman come in and they went on that crazy run where they were beating even the big boys in the league. They were beating everyone in their path, and obviously when he took over, they were in serious trouble, and he took them out of it. But then back end of the season, they kind of fizzled out again. So I was between E and F on this, but I think an E is about right for me. Mark, what did you make of Aldershot this season?
Well, you summed it up perfectly. John Coleman. didn't get off to the best of start. It did take a while for Aldershot to get motoring, but when they did, they weren't stopping. I mean, I think they were up in like 14th, 13th place at one point. And then it was the relief of being safe, and the results really, really started to diminish. And it was the problem. We can't keep going back to off the field problems. I mean, we know that Aldershot haven't got a lot of money. I mean, there's a debt of about £1 million there, but you just cannot go and say that every single time to give an excuse for a very, very poor end to the season. I think when they came to an agreement with John Coleman that he would leave, it is all down to were some of the players bothered? You just don't know. I mean, Josh Barrett leaving is going to be a huge, huge miss for them next season. I mean, Scott Davis, this is where he's going to have to earn his reputation, as a bright young manager. He's given up playing to do the Aldershot thing, but yeah, it just petered out. And after they won the FA Trophy last season as well, you could understand, whether there was a level of optimism there. It's like, great, we've won a trophy, let's try and build on it. And it just didn't work that way. And, it is a disappointing, but some were more disappointing than others, and that's why I gave them an E.
Yeah, I agree, mate. Louis, what did you make of Aldershot?
Yeah, I think it's a hard one to place with Aldershot because I think when you think back to a couple of seasons ago and they missed out on the playoffs by goal difference, I think that was kind of a season where it was above expectations for them. I think they're a club that, as we said, have got off-field issues, struggle with money. And if you'd have asked an Aldershot fan at the beginning of the season, you're not going to have the greatest season, but you're going to stay up, they might have gone, maybe I'll take that. Obviously, started the season with Tommy Witherington in charge, entertainers of the division. We called them value for money on the podcast for most of the season to start with. And it looked like they were just going to some weeks outscore their opponents and some weeks get outscored in that sense and lose 4-3 and win 4-3 in other weeks. But yeah, I mean, John Coleman, if you take out that run of form when they won, I think they got 27 points out of 30 over a period of time. We're up there with York and Rochdale in the form table. If you take that out, they'd have probably sat rock bottom and they'd have been well adrift. And they're lucky in that sense that they had that run. I just don't. I think the only thing that's keeping them away from an F from my rating is the fact that it didn't go down. But they're still in this division. They're still fighting. It is a regression on last season when you look from 16th to 20th. And yeah, it's just a bit of an F season for them. I don't think it's anything that the fans will write home about, and they'll just be hoping that next season that they can maybe keep themselves further away from danger going into it.
Yeah, I agree. Craig, what did you make of Aldershot?
Yeah, so I did give Aldershot an F. I was bitterly disappointed with them. They were that team that has looked like that attacking threat. They've been one of the most exciting teams in the National League over the last couple of seasons. And this year, I just thought they were really poor. Obviously, they started the season open, as expected. Coleman came in, obviously struggled to start with. We talked with him about the results not coming early doors in his spell. Then they did come, but that was good management, good loans. As soon as those loans went back as well, they fell apart. And ultimately, similar to Eastleigh, if there was better teams in this division than the shambles that was down the bottom this year, they'd have been banging trouble. What did they end up with? Like 40 odd points, I think it was. 46 points this season, so a point a game average for a team. Most seasons that relegates them. For me, they're an F, and they're very, very lucky there were 4 teams worse than them. And yeah, bit interesting for now that they've obviously recruited a part-time nobody, as they've talked about teams in this league before, like Brackley. They've now gone and looked at a team that was a part-time nobody in the league below and hired their manager who's made 8 signings already. So the biggest question is, will that be good or will they be next season's Sutton?
Yeah, I was going to bring that up when Mark was talking about Aldershot, actually, about getting the recruitment in early. I'm sure that'll go down well with Mr. Sharpley.
Oh, boy. Yeah. I hope he knows what he's doing.
That's coming out on the merch soon as well. I hope he knows what he's doing with Mark's face on it. I hope he knows what he's doing.
Lots of people will say that when I do this damn podcast, let me tell you.
Next up, we've got one of my favourite teams, Truro. As a podcast, we gave them an E. I gave them an F, and my reasoning is, I know they were punching above the weight. They done well to get in the league and everything like that, but the they finished bottom. They were poor throughout the year. They did pick up the odd good result in general, and they were never really battered by the big teams or anything like that. But for me, they finished bottom. Like, I've got to give them an F. But I can see obviously other people have gave a different opinion. So I'll come to Craig first because he thinks the same as me with an F. So Craig, what did you make of Truro this season?
Yeah, I think they can go out with their heads held high, but ultimately they weren't good enough for the level. And there's no disgrace in that for them because, like we said, they were punching well above their weight. But all the things I expected them to do well, they didn't quite do. Their home form was going to be massive for them. And they only won 8 games all season. I think only 5 of them were at home, maybe even 4. So for them to only win 4 or 5 home games out of 23, when we've talked about that being the biggest thing for them, would have been gutting for them. And they went down similar to us, really, with a bit of a whimper. Obviously, the bottom 3 were gone. Truro were gone at Easter. And I think if they'd have gone down but by a point or 2, I'd probably maybe even give them a D, maybe an E at least, kind of thing. But they just went down with a bit of a whimper. Their home form wasn't what it needed to be. They always seem to come out on the end. We talked about Braintree and them sliding door moments. They always seem to come out on the end of a narrow defeat. They were never battered. As far as I can remember, they were never battered, but they'd lose 2-1. They were 2-1 up against us going into stoppage time and lost 3-2 to us, and we barely scored a goal. So that was the day I knew they were down. It gave us a bit of false hope, but that was the day I knew they were down. And yeah, I think it came too early for them, and obviously you're never going to turn down a promotion. But I think another 2 seasons in the National League South, regrouping, getting things together, they've retained most of their players. I think they will come back, but it's so hard to come back as well. But if they do come back, I think they give a better fist of it next time.
Yeah, definitely. Louis, I'll come to you next. Obviously, you've gave Truro an E. What were your thoughts on Truro this season?
Yeah, I think as you say, coming into it, everyone kind of predicted them to be basement boys in that sense, and I think they obviously went full time when they came up as well, and they were never really disgraced, as Craig said. I think they lost to York in the second weekend of the season, and I think it was 2-0. It was 2 late goals. I think they went 1-0 down at home to Rochdale. They drew 1-1 with Forest Green. They drew 0-0 with Boreham Wood. They gave Carlisle a game at the end of the season, so they always seem to be giving teams a game. The ultimate thing is that they didn't beat the teams around them. Obviously, Craig said Braintree did the double over them. The only wins they picked up against the sides around them, away from home especially, was at us and against Morecambe. But their home wins, they beat Morecambe, they beat Boston, they beat Halifax. They know they beat Aldershot away. But you look at those sides, none of them are the teams around them. They didn't beat Brackley. They drew 3-3 at home. So it's one of those things where those are the games that they needed to win, and they ultimately didn't do it. And the issue there is the fact that they weren't good enough, but I think considering where they were in terms of their expectations going into the season, that's why I've given them an E instead of an F. And when you can compare the Fs that I've given to the basket cases that are Morecambe, for example, and compared to Eastleigh's expectations going into the season where they ended up, I think that's why my decision making was. I think it's a bad season for Truro. I don't think it's a catastrophe because the catastrophe is a Morecambe or an Eastleigh.
Yeah, that's fair
I
enough,
do
mate.
apologise. I thought I was muted when I sneezed.
No, I think you knocked your microphone back on when you sneezed. He's knocked it off again though, but yeah, I think he knocked it on by accident when he had his sneezing fit going on. Mark, I'm going to come to you last on Truro. Obviously, we've spoken about your pre-season expectations. What did you make of Truro this season?
Well, there went another rubber tree plan. Oh, it wasn't meant to be. I had the expectation for me personally. I mean, John Askey, absolute hero of mine. I so wanted them to do well, and it just never came true. But the reason why they've ended up with an E from me is because they made a scrap of it. I mean, they got some very impressive results, but not enough of them. Not enough of them. People went on about, it's going to be a very hard place to go because of the distance. No. You make it a hard place to go because you you're hard to beat there, and some of them just they were brushed aside in some, but some results went their way. And then when you saw them crawling up and thought, oh, hang on, maybe they've got the hang of this league, but no, it just wasn't to be. And I think a lot of people, including myself, were just seeing that hope fade away, and they just needed to be put out of the misery, which they were. But the ambition for them next season, they're sticking to full time. They'll be up there again in the National League South, but fair play to the people of Truro. I mean, they've never been in this position before, and I bet you they'd love to be in it again. But it wasn't like, well, look at Ebbsfleet last season, 19 points they went down with. At least they can say, well, we got nearly double that. So they made a scrap of it, but in the end, it was just a bridge too far.
I love that. That's your expectation. Ebbsfleet went down with 19 points, so they nearly got double that. So
Yeah.
I like
Well,
that.
I don't know what else to tell you.
I
To
like
be
that.
fair,
I think he's flip
I was
flopping again,
massively
Craig. He told me and you at the start of the season they were finishing 8th, mate, and now he's
Yeah,
saying, "Oh well, they've done well to get 30 something points."
yeah. I
How you could have
know. I
them
mean,
finishing
I'll
8th and
be
they
the
finished
first.
24th and then not put them as an F, by the way, is scandalous.
and bear in mind, I was new to the National League last season. This season, sorry. So I was just taking Mark at his word. That'll never happen again,
Why?
guys. Either I can
Oh
assure you.
no! Never do that. Never do that. For the love of God, just trust your own instincts.
Finished bottom of the predictions league and had Truro to finish 8th. That's enough to
There you go. That should
just
be a
rule
strong
Mark out
indicator.
there.
That should be a strong indicator that I'm going to win everything next year.
Next year's Mark's year. Next up, we've got
Sound like a
Brackley,
Liverpool
I
fan.
believe. We've got Brackley. I'm the only one that's gave them an F. The reason I've gave them an F, again, it's similar to Truro. I think punching above the weight when they came up, but I think you can't look past the fact that they've obviously went down, and that run at the end of the season with the appointed Andy Wing, they did do well under Cowan, and I think that's probably why most of you have gone with an E, because if he hadn't left, they might have stayed up. But I can't look past the fact that they went 14 games without a win back end of the season when they needed to get a result at any cost to stay up, and they just couldn't. So I've maybe been a little bit harsh, but I feel like an F's fair from me. Louis, what did you make of Brackley this season?
Yeah, I think ultimately, as you said, they were punching above their weight to come up. The expectation at the beginning of the season would have been, can we finish fifth from bottom and build on that? And as you say, they had a good start. I don't think they were really troubled by relegation until towards end of February, beginning of March, when we did our mid-season predictions. I think me and Craig had them going down, and it was semi-surprising. I think we gave them a public apology about 6 weeks later when they had a 9-game unbeaten run. But it was 7 draws and one win in that time, I think. So they just didn't win enough games in that sense when they were doing well. They only got the draws, and it's similar to Braintree. They didn't score enough goals. I think they were second worst goal scorers in the league behind Braintree, and that was their Achilles heel at the end of the day. And once Gavin Cowan left, it was obviously a decision that they didn't make themselves. He obviously moved to Shrewsbury, which was his boy town club, which you can't knock him for in that sense. And maybe he saw things coming down the line that he thought, I'll get away from this because my stock's high at the moment and I can move on to the division above. Because ever since that happened, it tailed off for them. And as you say, they went down with a whimper, really. The only thing, as I say, similar to the Truro, is the reason why I didn't give them an F is because they're not a basket case as the Morecambe are. It's the same argument in that sense. But yeah, be interesting to see what they do next season. They've obviously put out a statement about building the infrastructure at the club, so that they'll look to bounce back first time of asking. But similar to the South and North, is a very tough division to get out of.
Yeah, definitely. Craig, what did you make of Brackley this season? Obviously, I know Louis said there you both had them going down in our mid-season predictions. I remember saying at the time, thought it was a bold call, but you were both right. So
Yeah, about time I got one right, wasn't it, really? So, yeah, I think the biggest issues for them was obviously the managerial change wasn't planned. I do think they were already on the start of a slippery slope before he left. So would they have gone down? It's still a strong possibility. The biggest thing for me as well, though, was their squad depth. Towards the end of the season, they were naming 3-4 subs at times. They did get ravaged by injuries. Loans went back. Things didn't quite work out the way they wanted. but they gave it a really good fist of it. And when you look at the teams that got relegated, you could probably only really say that about them, out the four of them. They were obviously flying at mid-table. The alarm bells going from there, and looking back at it now, it's clear that they were going to struggle. Is they would not score enough goals, as you said. They scored 40 all season. Obviously, that's less than one a game. Only two more than us, and we've continuously talked about Braintree's plight in front of goal. Brackley was only two better in the end, and yeah, the appointment of Wing seemed a good one, but ultimately being a part-time team with a relentless schedule, I know Louis spoke about this a lot, he never had really had a chance. That maybe they should have stayed with the interim team that was getting a little bit of a tune out of them, and then looked again in the summer to have someone with National League experience, because they might have stayed in there, because I think he maybe went in and has his own ways, and trying to change things mid-season is hard at any team. Trying to change things mid-season at a part-time team is even harder. A part-time team that were behind on fixtures were playing catch-up. So they were playing Saturday, Tuesdays a lot of the time. It was relentless for them, and ultimately it all caught up with their very, very thin squad. And I do feel for them because they're similar size to us. They gave it a very good go. And yeah, it's going to be hard to get out of that north because there's such good sides in there these days, especially Chester, I really like.
Yeah. Talking of the National League North, we'll come to Mark next. Obviously, Macclesfield. What did you make of Brackley this season?
The E is for Gavin Cowan. I believe I had Brackley to go down at the start of the season, and I was looking a little bit foolish when Gavin Cowan got them up to I think it was the dizzy heights of 11th or 10th, I think it was. But it was once he went and Andy Wing got appointed, it was a very exciting. It's like, yes, this is one of the best, brightest young managers. And he just couldn't get anything out of him. I found it truly extraordinary, and it was just that lack of, well, the lack of everything, that, and they just started to drop like a stone. It was, I mean, Andy Wing had a very sort of similar squad to what he would have had at Solihull, so you instantly think, yeah, okay, this might be his type of team, and it just didn't work, and I don't know. I don't think anybody's going to be able to explain it, and they ultimately paid for it. You go on a bad run, as Craig will testify with Braintree towards the end of the season. Once it gets a grip of you, then it's very difficult to get out of it, especially when you can't score goals. Again, another team that just couldn't do it. But yeah, it was a very strange thing. I mean, Gavin Cowan, did himself a favour, possibly by having that run, getting them to the mid-table. But it didn't do Brackley any favours, because when a manager such as Gavin Cowan has gone, and an expectation on a manager like Andy Wing, when he came in, were the hopes too high? We just don't know. But as Hulk Hogan once said, that don't work for me, brother. And it really didn't this time. And again, ultimately, they paid for it.
Yeah, a Hulk Hogan quote on National League Lowdown. You heard it here first. Next up, we've got Sutton. Craig, I'll come to you first. We'll leave Louis till the end for this one. What did you make of Sutton this season, mate?
Yeah, I think the way I described Sutton, especially under Chris Gatto, was wildly inconsistent. We obviously spoke to him the other day, and with Mark spoke about the recruitment at the start. It's clear that was wrong. Steve Morrison picked the wrong players. He had them in the wrong style. They didn't work hard enough for each other, and ultimately they looked favourites to go down. I'm sure everyone will remind how much I wound Louis up about over the season, and that's come back to bite me in the bum big styles on that one. Since Agatha's come in, I think it was until the last 5 games, they were sitting in about 11th or 12th in the form table, maybe even slightly higher than that. So they got reasons to be optimistic going into next season. The biggest thing for them now, and I keep going back onto the pod because obviously we've spoke to the manager 3-4 days ago. It helps massively on that one. If you haven't watched it, please tune into it. It's an excellent thing, and he's so honest with us, and it was really refreshing to hear just how he sees the game. So yeah, definitely tune into that one. But yeah, there's reasons to be optimistic if they get the recruitment right. And as he said, it's 9/10 of the job these days is recruitment. If you get that right, you're laughing. If you get that wrong, what hope have you got? And they got it wrong at the start. They then showed under him the fighting qualities. Granted, sometimes too much, because they went for a stage where they were losing games because they were getting silly red cards and throwing games away. But once they got that right, they finished a lot safer than they probably needed to be in the end. And they took their foot off the pedal with 5-6 games to go. Because I think if everyone at the bottom was winning, I think they'd have found a way to keep winning as well. But I think because the bottom four was decided, there was maybe some mentality issues within the squad that they kind of switched off. But they had been through the ringer since about match day 1. So to get out will be a good one for them. But yeah, an F for the start of the season, probably a C since Agatha's come in. But overall, I've gave them an E.
Yeah, I mean, I've gave them an E as well. Just echo really what Craig said. Really poor start. I remember, I'm sure Sutton had only won one game by maybe November time, and that was against Carlisle, because I remember talking to Louis about it. Said, I can't believe the one win you got was against us. And yeah, since Agatha has come in, obviously he has turned it around, but he's had a massive squad overhaul, bringing young players in. So there's been a lot of upheaval. Like Craig mentioned, red cards as well. So I think for me, an E's about right. I agree with if the teams at the bottom were winning, I agree with what Craig said as well. I think he would have found a way, but I think we could have said that about maybe Aldershot as well, a couple of other teams as well. But they knew that the job was done, they were safe, so they maybe took the foot off the gas back into the season. So that's kind of where we went with an E and not a D, but it was in between there for me. Mark, what did you make of Sutton this season?
Well, I think we know. It doesn't bear repeating what I thought of their transfer policy at the start of the season. Completely ridiculous. But the reason why I've given them a D is because Chris Agata and his honesty. That's what got him. He looked at that team and he knew he had to do something and wasn't afraid to do something about it, which ultimately saved Sutton. And he's got free reign now. This transfer window. As long as he does it on his terms, doesn't put all his eggs in one basket, he will be absolutely fine. But it was, I think if he was being honest with himself when he could look at that Sutton squad and say, this is not good enough. Changes had to be made. And he went ahead and made them. Then they got the results that ultimately kept them up. Yeah, there was a drift off, but there was a lot of teams drifting off once they secured that place in the league. But I'll be fascinated to see what Chris does. I mean, again, listen to the podcast that these guys did with Chris Agata. I mean, fantastic bloke, fantastic. He knows what he wants, and he will do everything in his power to get it. Will they struggle without Lewis Simper? Time will tell on that one, but it all depends. You can't look backwards. You've got to look forwards. And if he brings in some impressive signings, then yeah, why not? But it was sheer D for determination.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good way to do it. Louis, what did you make of your team this season?
Ultimately, a disappointment in the sense of at the beginning of the season, finishing 12th last year, the expectation was to push towards those playoff places and to push to get back into the Football League, which obviously, as Chris said on our podcast the other day, is the aim of the club. We want to get back into the Football League. Once you've had a taste of it, you want it again, and we do. And I think the expectations realigned as the season went on, and as you say, we only picked up one win until our second win of the season against Eastleigh in the first week in November, which suggests the size of the task that he had when he came into the job. And it was at the end of the day an inconsistent season. We put in performances against the likes of Rochdale where we, on our performance should have won that game. We gave York a good game at home. We got a point against Forest Green, and despite playing against 10 men, we were the better side. We beat Scunthorpe away. We went to Halifax and got a point. We beat Halifax at home. But then there's the games against Truro at home where we lost 3-0. Morecambe at home where we lost 5-0, Boston away when we lost 1-0 and looked like we weren't a pair of footballers. So it was a really inconsistent season for us, and it's successful in the sense that we stayed up because, as Craig said, we looked absolutely dead and buried in end of October, beginning of November. Um, but one that we can hopefully build upon. And as you say, it's a massive summer. We talked about some last summer, it just didn't work. I was quite optimistic with it. I think there was a lot of young talent in there, but underestimating the step up from the south of the National League is what the club did, and putting too much eggs in one basket in the sense of having too many young players that have potential but ultimately will burn out when they're transitioning from semi pro to full time. So that was our undoing. So yeah, glad we're still in the division because that ultimately was the aim at Christmas time, to stay in the division. But yeah, I hope, dear God, I hope it's a better season next year because I saw 4 or 5 wins out of 25 games this season when I went, and that was not fun.
Yeah, I mean, we've mentioned it a couple of times, but if you haven't, once you've watched the end of this podcast, go over and watch our interview with Sutton United manager Chris Agata. Really enjoyed it. Spoke very openly, passionately about his time at the club, his career, and everything. So head over and listen to that after you've watched this. Next up, we've got Yeovil, I believe. Again, we're pretty unanimous apart from Louis here, but for me with Yeovil, I just think massively underachieving for the size of the club, and similar to Sutton, to be honest, very inconsistent. You never quite know what you're going to get from them. Louis, I'll come back to you first on this one, mate. What did you make of Yeovil this season?
Yeah, it's an odd one. I think I've got the positions wrong on that graphic, actually. I can't imagine they finished 12th, or did they finish that high, or did they escape me that far into the season? Um, yeah, ultimately, obviously, a club that had numerous managers across the season. Obviously, started with Mark Cooper, went to, was it, I can't remember who they went to now. Was it Drysdale?
Richard
Obviously, went to
Dryden.
Danny Webb at one point as well. Yeah, and then obviously ended up with Billy Rowley, who has done a good job because they were staring down the barrel of relegation again, similar to Sutton in that sense. So I think, yeah, the size of the club takes into account. I think I had them around this position where they finished in the pre-season prediction, so I wasn't expecting too much for them. Obviously, last season 24-25 was their first after promotion from the south, so they are that kind of club that will have aspirations to get back into the Football League. Obviously, being there before, but ultimately, they did the job that they needed to do when it came to around February, March, which was to stay in the division, and they did it fairly comfortably.
Yeah, just for correction there, I just looked. Yeovil finished 16th, not 12th. So obviously, it still is an improvement on last season, but only just minor. Mark, what did you make of Yeovil this season?
You think of the heritage of Yeovil Town in the non-league fraternity, if you will. I mean, this is one of the biggest names in non-league, no doubt. And it's very strange how it all went so badly. I mean, none of the fans like Mark Cooper. I mean, they couldn't wait until he'd gone, and they got their wish. They had Richard Dryden for a couple of games, and then the debacle with Danny Webb. I mean, what? I don't think we're ever going to find out what actually went on there, but it was as the Smith said, he was bored before he even began, and then off he went. Richard Dryden then comes back in, but they have got a true talent in Billy Rowley. As long as he doesn't turn up to his old club's Player of the Year with the Director of Football, he should be fine in the transfer market. But they need they've released a lot of players. They need an overhaul there. A club with Yeovil's stature needs to be up there, and 16th position, if I was a Yeovil fan, is totally unacceptable. But yeah, they just made hard work for themselves, and if they can just give themselves a break and try to become what a lot of Yeovil fans, especially a lot of the older Yeovil fans, expect them to be. They expect them to be this non-league giant. They need to be turned around again. And Billy Rowley can do that. He just needs to be very savvy in the transfer market, because 16th, yeah, bit unacceptable. But, let's see what the pre-season brings.
Yeah, definitely. Craig, what did you make of Yeovil this season?
Yeah, if you look at the last 3 seasons, they've gone from winning the National League South to finishing 18th to finishing 16th. You think, yeah, that's not too bad, to be fair, but it only tells a very, very small part of the story. This season, on and off the field, was a bit of a car crash, if truth be told. Obviously, 4 different managers through different spells. Cooper kind of was failing. They were struggling towards the bottom end. Dryden did an okay job as the interim. Webb's one game was a bit of a shambles, in all honesty, and didn't paint the club and new owners in any good lights. Dryden came back in, obviously had a good bit of form that ultimately probably kept him in the job longer than he probably should have been. When they realised he wasn't showing the full potential of the club, they went out and probably got the right manager in the end in Billy Rowley. And I'll be looking forward to what they do next season in that sense. But yeah, it's the big turnover for this year. They need to get most of that squad out. I think they haven't retained most of it, and it will be how he recruits and where he recruits from after some discussions and stuff that's been seen on social media this week. But yeah, yeah, I think E's about right because they've been very underwhelming, but they are actually showing in isolation. If you just look at it, it is an improvement on last season.
Yeah, I was definitely between D and E for them. Next up, I believe we're going into the D's now. I don't think there's many, but we've got Solihull Moors. I gave them a D. I mean, for me, again, I was between D and E, but I remember they had appointed when they appointed Millington, and I remember them beating Tamworth 7-1. They brought Joe Sabara back to the club. That they brought players in like Jacob Wakeling, players like that, and they were like playing really well, but they were very inconsistent. And they were really poor back into the season. And I remember like at one point saying that if any of the bottom 4 could have strung a few wins together, they could have got dragged into it. But then I think they did get a couple of good results right at the end that took them away from it. But for me, they were very inconsistent. And I think for Millington, it'll be about recruitment again in the summer. See if he can keep these loan players like Sabara and people like that and see what they do next season. But yeah, this was one that I really struggled with because I couldn't decide between a D and an E. Craig, what did you make of Solihull Moors this season?
Yeah, I did go for an E. I was just underwhelmed with them all season long. They had a good spell, but so did most teams. They obviously kept Matt Taylor on from last season, and he was massively underwhelming. They were looking bang in trouble. Millington, probably the best terminology for them, is just steadied the ship. He hasn't pulled up many trees really in that sense, and they finished 14th last season. They finished 14th this season. There's no progression there. You'd argue probably the points. I haven't seen them both, but I'd imagine the points tally is lower than last season. They had to heavily rely on loan players. Their best player decided to leave and go to Boreham Wood throughout the season. So it's one that I'd be worried about. They're obviously never going to get the biggest attendances there. I'm not going to get into the attendance battles today. That's for a different day. But they almost, one of them teams that tried to make the next step, ultimately came up short, and now they're just sliding into a bit of mediocrity. And if they keep sliding, they've got to be very careful because they could be facing National League North football in a couple of seasons' time if this slide continues. But I like the manager. I think he will get it right there with a bit more time and a bit of decent recruitment. It seems to be a theme. But like we said, it's the biggest part of management these days is recruitment. Get that right and he'll be in a good position for next season because he's a good manager, no doubt about that.
Yeah, definitely, mate. Louis, what did you make of Solihull Moors this season?
Yeah, and as you said, they started with Matt Taylor. He just wasn't good enough. I don't think I had them low down in my predictions because of the way they finished the 24-25 season, and they only just managed to survive that season as well. I think they went into the last day of the season having only just survived that season. Um, they had some highs. They obviously won 1-0 at York earlier on in the season. They drew 3-3 at Carlisle at home, which I think was an entertaining game that they could have won. They beat Hartlepool 4-3 at home. They beat us 4-1 at home. You obviously mentioned the Tamworth win as well. And around that Christmas time, it looked like they could be one of the sides that then pushed their momentum on and go up into and challenge for those playoff places. And then they beat Morecambe away. And after that, I think they didn't win for 10 or 11 games, got the point away against Truro, I think it was. And that was basically because the 4 teams were worse than them. That was it. They managed to keep their head above water in that sense. So I've given them a D because I think they showed spells during the season where they could have competed towards the top end of the playoffs with, as we mentioned, the sides that they beat during those games and the performances they put in. I remember they narrowly lost to Boreham Wood, and Callum said that was one of their best performances of the season despite defeat. So they showed at times that they could compete with the sides at the top, similar to Sutton, just completely inconsistent. And yeah, a bang on 14th finish, but next season is their massive one for them. Do they go one way or do they go the other? If they slide back down, they'll be in a relegation battle, no doubt about it, and they'll be one of the sides that we could be talking about dropping. If they go the other way, they'll be in the playoff shout. So it's a huge summer for them. And as Craig said, Chris Millington is a very, very good manager. He obviously did a really good job at Halifax. So be interesting to see what happens there.
Yeah, I agree, mate. Mark, what did you make of Solihull Moors this season?
Oh, good grief! Again, a side that wanted to perform but just couldn't remember the lines. Matt Taylor wasn't the most popular of people there. I don't think the start that they made was truly brilliant, but they did get Chris Millington in, who did so well at Halifax the previous season, and there were the shoots of greatness. I mean, the 7-1 against Tamworth, that's something for Solihull fans to talk about. When they brought back Joe Sabara, you could look at that and think, right, now they mean business. But for me, losing James Clark was a massive blow. It disjointed them. Clark, arguably their best player, and to lose your best player and then think, where are we going to go from here? I mean, they got Lewis Baines in from Altrincham, who's no slouch, but Clark he just held them together, and just very, very, very underwhelming. I mean, the fact that they finished 14th this season, finished 14th last season, has shown precious little progress. But now that Chris Millington, once again, he's got a full pre-season ahead of him, he's got a full transfer window to play with. Will Sabara go back? Will Lewis Baines go there? I've been seeing a couple of Altrincham fans who suggested that he will. Build a team and make them, like he had his Halifax team, hard to beat, and they can get the goals. If they do get Sabara back, then that'll be a huge, huge benefit to them. He knows where the back of the net is. He's such a good player. But yeah, it's just underwhelming when you finish in the same position 2 seasons in a row.
Yeah, definitely. Just before we move on, another player that I haven't mentioned was Darius Lipswich. I hope I pronounced that right. I think he's been outstanding for them this season as well, but I believe he's on loan there as well. So if they can keep hold of him as well, that'll be a big one for them. Next up,
From Stoke.
From Stoke.
Yeah.
I mean, it'd be unlucky to not get a game for them, to be fair. But if Solihull could get him somehow, then that'll be a great addition to them. Next up, we've got Gateshead. I've gave Gateshead a C, but as a podcast, we've gave them a D. For me, I said before we went live, I said to Craig, I was like, it's because first part of the season they were probably an F. They couldn't buy a win. But then since Rob Elliott came in, they're probably an A. So I just went slap bang in the middle and went for a C, because that Great Escape is the greatest of great escapes, and I don't think that'll be emulated again anytime soon, the way they pulled that off. Craig, what did you make of Gateshead?
Yeah, I'd say harsh on this one. I went for an E. But as you said, it's an F early on in the season. It's probably an A, maybe a B in Rob Elliott's tenure. They were shocking. They went on that obviously long winless streak where it looked like they were doomed. They had the sliding doors moment where obviously Elliott came in. They had all those games postponed, and they had almost a mini pre-season, as we've discussed before. And then things got a lot better. But I'm just looking at it as a season. I know to finish 8th the season before. I know they've had the off-field troubles over the summer with the failed takeovers and all of that. To then finish 18th and ultimately be happy at the end shows how bad the early start of the season was, and I just couldn't get past that. So that's why I've gone for an E. But ultimately, if it was how good as Rob Elliott's Gateshead been, it will be an A or a B. But Gateshead as a whole on this season, I've gone E, because they've fallen 10 positions, and without a miracle, which they got, and I say they got a miracle, they deserved it in the end because of the way they played and the braveness in their style. They would have been doomed. And yeah, sliding doors moments, that Keaton Ward winner against us would beat Truro a couple of days before and would have been about 15 points above Gateshead at that stage, and we finished about 12 behind them, I think, in the end. So yeah, sliding doors moments, but yeah.
Yep.
He's maybe harsh, but I don't care.
No,
I've gone for it.
I think you've explained it quite well, mate. I think that's fair. And just while we're doing shout outs, obviously we've had 2 podcasts where we've had Keaton Ward on, and we had one with Keaton Ward and Brad Nicholson as well. So if you want to head over and watch them while we're obviously over the summer, and there's ones you haven't maybe caught up on so far, head over and watch that. And they talk about Gateshead's Great Escape in detail with us. Mark, what did you make of Gateshead this season?
Well, I had them to go down. No, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I had them to go down. Again, off field, but they had the door slammed in their face on this one. Something got taken away from them. I mean, you could say that Morecambe's off the field has come from people who didn't know. Gateshead's came from people that they never got to know. It disrupted a lot of their pre-season preparation. The results weren't coming. Alan Armstrong tried his best, tried, but there's a big difference because he was at Darlington, then went to Gateshead, but it just didn't click. And then all of a sudden, Rob Elliott is the man, with a lot of people taken by surprise. I don't think anybody would have predicted that he would have gone back to Gateshead, given the position they were in. I think it was, 16 games without a win. And then, like Chris Agata had to do at Sutton, he ripped up that Gateshead team. Keaton Ward, Brad Nicholson, who we didn't mention at Solihull. Yeah, a surprise sign. Mark Beck, not everybody's cup of tea. But when you're down in the bottom, you don't care what style of player, as long as they give 100% in the commitment, if they can chip in with the goals, he's got the team back together again. And Rob Elliott is a good manager. He proved that once at Gateshead. He got them together, he pulled them up, and I will be the first to say, very well done to you. Now that they've got some investment in, who knows? Who knows what can happen? There's some managerial vacancies. There's, managers still in a job, Mark Hughes, who might have that Rob Elliott link to them. But if he's allowed to stay, they can, and importantly, they can go up into the Football League with that stadium as well. Now that was an obstacle when they were in the playoffs. They weren't allowed to go up. But now that they've got that license, get a decent team together. Why not? But yeah, they did so well. But it took a massive change to make that happen, both managerial and in the playing staff. That's why I've got a D. But now, hats off to them for what they achieved.
Yeah, I agree, mate. Louis, what did you make of Gateshead?
Yeah, ultimately, I had them at the beginning of the season, looking back on my 124s, I had them in and around this position, so I didn't expect them to pull up any trees this season. I think the off-field issues were sufficient in that sense of my reasoning, and they finished around where I expected them to, albeit I know there's a season that's gone on in between that, but I didn't expect them to do much in that sense. They obviously got through to the FA Cup second round as well, and some of their performances under Elliott were sufficient enough for them to warrant an A or a B, and the rest of it, as we've said, is a D, E, and F for their performances before that. So yeah, I think it's somewhere in the middle in that sense, and they'll be happy that they stayed up. But yeah, I think that's fair enough for my position.
Yeah, definitely. Next up, I believe we're going into the C's now. I think it's Altrincham next. Just waiting for the slide. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, Altrincham. I've gave them a D because I thought, again, mixed bag. Didn't quite know what we were going to get. We thought at one point they were banging trouble. Then they signed Declan Howe. He came in, scored some big goals in their battle for safety, and then they were comfortably safe in the end. So I was between C and D, but I went for D. Louis, what did you make of Altrincham this season?
Yeah, ultimately, I think it goes back to what happened in the summer before the season started. They lost, obviously, Regan Linney, went to Carlisle, lost Alex Newby, went to York City. So I think when you lose the goals and the assists that those two players have given you, it was always going to be an uphill battle. And I know that the club is full-time professional. They've got expectations to push to try and get into the Football League. But I think considering what happened off-field, I would have predicted them to finish mid-table, maybe touch on towards the playoffs. So yeah, it's an underwhelming in that sense because they never looked like they were going to reach towards those players. Obviously, said they were going to struggle. Started the season with Phil Parkinson. Their performances were okay to start with. I just think they weren't getting the results that they deserved. Obviously, parted way with Phil Parkinson and Morton Dowson, and he steadied the ship. Had a bit of a turnover. Obviously, you mentioned Declan Howell brought in the goals, some crucial wins in that time. Maybe sort of looked like they were going to go down, looked like they weren't going to go down. So kind of middle of the road, I think, in that sense. But they competed in a lot of games when Dowson took over, and I think 13th probably is fair enough reflection of their season. Sometimes they were
Neil
good.
Gibson.
Neil Gibson. Oh, why am I saying
Yeah.
Dowson? It's been an hour already. My head's gone. Uh, so yeah, ultimately, I think that it's a middle of the road season, which is why I've given them a middle of the road C.
Yeah. Mark, what did you make of Altrincham this season?
Oh, this is going to be a tough one. A Mac fan talking about Altrincham, but yeah, it was. I think I'd given them at the start of the season mid-table respectability. I mean, replacing Regan Linney and Alex Newby, who provided so many goals for them, was always going to be a big, big ask. I know they got Declan Howe in before he had to go back to Scunthorpe, but we are missing one player who has been one of my favourites this season, Oliver Crankshaw. When he's fit, Altrincham tick like a clock. He is so good, and they are so better with him. And they've also got another winger called Lucas Weaver, who I'm also a big fan of. He can get the get. He's almost like your Alex Newby, but it's about time he got a proper chances. But Neil Gibson has been giving him that chance. The chances that he probably didn't get under Phil Parkinson, but had Phil Parkinson run his course there, possibly needs a fresh challenge. He's got that at Chester, but Neil Gibson wasn't. Again, another person, probably not the first name on everybody's lips, but he's given Weaver the chance. Jimmy Knowles as well was chipping in with goals. He signed from Boston United. He was chipping in with the goals. But for me, their player of the season, definitely Oliver Crankshaw. And yeah, he did the job of getting Altrincham up into mid-table. If they can hang on to him, that'll be good. But again, another manager with another pre-season, another transfer window. Let's see what they do. But yeah, I think mid-table, given what they had to do in the middle of the season, suits them.
Yeah. Craig, what did you make of Altrincham this season?
Yeah, I think they probably finished where they deserved to. Were they ever really in a relegation battle? Probably not. Were they ever good enough to finish where they did last season with what Louis said, obviously losing their two best players? Ultimately, no. So about 13th is probably about right for them. And just linking back to what Mark said, I've got a few stats for you on here. Only Knowles got over 10 goals and over 15 goal involvements for the team. They ultimately struggled to replace all them goals that they lost. They only scored, I think it was 55 goals this season, which in grand scheme of things isn't ever going to get you near the playoffs. You're looking at your 70s, 80s in there for that as well. Crankshaw missed 16 games, I believe it was. So 18 games. He only played 28 games and got 9 goals. So he could be the answer if he can stay fit. But it's all if buts and maybes with them. Declan Howe was their fourth top scorer and he played 8 games. He had 6 goal involvements in 8 games. See why Scunthorpe took him back. So I think they've really got to recruit at that top end of the pitch for them. They've got to find that 20-goal striker and then maybe they can start pushing towards the playoffs. But yeah, 13th, D for me, because they've regressed from last season. But I think ultimately, as Louis said, they were probably going to regress after losing Newby and Linney.
Yeah. Next up, we've got Hartlepool, I believe. Yeah. I've given them a D. I think I've given them the lowest out of everyone. For me, all season, I just think they've been one of them teams you just never knew what you were going to get. And there's been a few, but just one week they'll turn up. I remember Carlisle went to their place and Tyrese Sinclair ripped us apart. Played absolutely astoundingly well, and everyone was like, "Oh, they might make the playoffs." But then they went and lost the next game. They lost, obviously, was it 7-0 at Wealdstone? Things like that. So I couldn't give them any higher than a D personally. Craig, I'll come back to you, mate. What did you make of Hartlepool this season?
Yeah, I'm going to class this season as a step in the right direction for them. That's why I've gone for a C. Again, a lack of goals. Only Alex Reid got above 10 goals for them. In fact, he was the only one that got above 5 league goals for them. So that was a big issue for them again this season. And ultimately they've released him at the end of the season or not agreed terms with him. So that'll be an interesting one going forward. But they're making steady progress. Obviously, the biggest thing for them this season was the change in ownership. And Featherstone coming after Grayson. I think Grayson made them very defensively solid. They just drew so many games early on in the season. I think if he'd have won one, lost one, he'd have ultimately probably kept his job a bit longer. But it was win one, draw 3, lose 2 in a 6-game spell under him. But they looked good. They obviously had Cartwright in goal at the start of the season. It was absolutely phenomenal goalkeeper, and I'm a big fan of his Mark. And ultimately, they've progressed. They've moved up the table, and they'll be ones that if they get recruitment right under Lee Clark, we'll be thinking this is bang open for us to get in the playoffs next season.
Yeah, definitely. Louis, what did you make of Hartlepool this season?
Yeah, obviously I'm the outlier here, giving them a B. I think, as Craig said, they're moving in the right direction. They improved on last season's position of 11th, moved up into ninth. They were in the playoff race until that 7-0 defeat at Wealdstone. We obviously did our run in special and we made a joke about it because that episode was done the night after the 7-0. But they were fully in that playoff race up until that point, I think. Even though they were inconsistent, obviously the circle of life, as I've gone over all season, I was proved right in the end that Featherstone did end up losing his job, albeit it was at the end of the season. So I think there's reason for them to feel positive about this season. Obviously, it's a stronger division this season as well, so that improvement on their positioning reflects well on them, and they proved at times that they could compete with the best. You obviously mentioned the Carlisle win that they got. They took York to the 113th minute. They beat Rochdale at Accrington Stanley, given it was a neutral venue, so they competed with the sides at the top. Ultimately, it came down to those games when they lost to the likes of Sutton at home that it came to bite them on the bum and make them not get that last playoff place at the end of the day. But there's reasons for them to be positive, and considering all of the off-field stuff that went on with Raj Singh at the beginning of the season and then the takeover from Landon Smith, I think it's a positive season for Hartlepool, and that's why I've given them the B.
Mark, what did you make of Hartlepool this season?
Brilliantly defensive wise at the start of the season. As Craig pointed out, I'm massive fan of Harvey Cartwright. Got a young goalkeeper, seems to be one of the themes in this season. But it was at the other end when Alex Reid. How many goals did Reid get? Was it 10? Above that, 12. Yeah, that's what happens when you can keep a clean sheet, but you only get one goal to progress on that. But the whole thing, I mean, the change in manager when Nicky Featherstone took over after Grayson was told to shut that door afterwards. Maybe he shouldn't have been given a permanent contract. Just keep him as an interim until the end of the season. They tend to do better, but it's interesting that there was the upheaval. The owner was not very popular, and that's putting it kindly. But they finished 9th. There are reasons to be cheerful. Lee Clark's going to come in, a very interesting appointment after it was suggested that Lee Cattermole was, all ready to take his place at his desk. See how well Hartlepool get backed. Replacing Reid, they'll find somebody. Maybe they should take a look at Paul Blackett at South Shields. There he goes, 28 years of age. Maybe now is his time to see what he can do at a higher level. Declan Howe managed it. But yeah, there's seeds of eternal hope are now planted. There's no disruption. See what Clark can do. But yeah, it's just a season type of position.
Yeah. Next up, we've got Woking, I believe. Yeah. I've given them a D because I thought they were really poor to start the season. Obviously, I know they finished the season strongly under Jermaine Defoe and everything, but for me, again, similar to Hartlepool, I couldn't give them any higher than a D. So, Craig, I'll come to you first. What did you make of Woking this season?
Yes, similar reasons to you, really. I think they got better towards the end under Ardley. I think the football come a little bit turgid, a little bit boring, and it was going through the motions. They made a brave appointment, but as we've discussed, it was probably at the right times in the season as well, because it gave Defoe 6 to 7 games of getting used to the team. They used the loan market particularly well. I thought Ollie Sanderson obviously was phenomenal. 16 goals for him in 40 appearances. Shows why he's now talked about going into the EFL or to the upper reaches of this level next season. If he does get released by Fulham, I haven't seen obviously retained list from the Premier League teams. Won't have come out just yet. But overall, they're in a good place going into next season. They've progressed again. They've made steady improvements from the season before, where they were very, very poor early on and got better. I think the recruitment of the manager is a good one. He uses connections. He's got experience around him, and they'll do well next season. But yeah, D's fair. If we'd have got, and obviously we've gone as a series of podcast, I'm happy with that. Fair reflection. I'm intrigued why Louis went for a B though.
Yeah, we'll come to Louis next. Louis, what did you make of Walk in this season?
Ultimately, I mean, I did have them getting in the playoffs at the beginning of the season, so on my terms, it is an underachievement in that sense. But I think they never really looked troubled by relegation. I know they had a poor run of form when they came to our place in February and we beat them 2-1 with 10 men for 70 minutes. They really did look dire that day, but they were pushing on the playoff places. And when I can't remember the interim manager, can't remember, it's gone from my head, but he had a
Craig Ross, Jake Hyde.
there we go, Craig Ross and Jake Hyde. It's just come to me. They ultimately had a really good spell as manager and put them into a position where they could have got into the playoffs because of the run of form that they were on. So 11th place finish, I don't think is too shabby from them. I think for the club of that size, yeah, they're going to have their aspirations to get in there. That's why Jermaine Defoe's obviously gone there. But I think a B is fair enough in the sense that they didn't pull up too many trees, but they were close enough to get into the roots.
I'm just going to say this now, Louis. I wish you were my school teacher, because if not too shabby gets you to B, I would have absolutely flew through school. I love that, mate. I absolutely love that. Mark, what did you make of Walk in this season?
Well, the dry toast to begin with. They weren't the most exciting team to watch. I think Louis did Woking and Sutton have a 0-0 draw that could even make dry paint wet again.
It was 1-1,
It
yeah.
was
I do
1-1,
remember
but
that game.
it was like pulling teeth apparently from what I saw. And then all of a sudden, a football match broke out, and they went on this incredible purple patch under Neil Ardley, and the results improved. The C, if we're talking toast analogies, C's for crispy, because they did enough to warrant that. I mean, it didn't end well for Neil Ardley. Craig Ross and Jake Hyde came in. People who knew the club, they knew what to do. And then the appointment of Jermaine Defoe, I mean, that was a bolt out of the blue. I mean, that was very impressive. And we shall see, has Jermaine got, what contacts does he have? I'm intrigued as to what they'll do in the transfer market. Who can he bring in? If they can bring back the wonderful Ollie Sanderson, who got them out of trouble so many times. Tim Akinola as well. They're one of their players of the season. He did absolutely fantastic in that midfield. But what will Jermaine Defoe pull out of the hat for Woking? And let's see how they are in the toastometer next season.
Next up, we've got Boston, I believe. Yeah, Boston. I give them a C again. Had a poor start. Struggled under Graham Coughlin. Obviously, we had Graham on the podcast, so if you haven't watched that one, give that a watch as well. And then Paul Hurst came in, and he really turned it around, and they went on a really good run as well. Got like recruitment right. Brought Kersons in. He started scoring goals. Frankie Maguire found form. They brought Grimes in as well, I think it was, and he hit the ground running as well. So they've got the recruitment right, and ultimately led them to mid-table security, comfortable end to the season, and yeah, they had to be a C for me. Craig, I'll come to you first. What did you make of Boston?
Yeah, I think you've summed it up quite well. They were sliding down the table under Coughlin. He's getting a reputation maybe now as a firefighter, going in, making things better for the season, but unfortunately not being able to take the next step with teams. Hurst came in and got his recruitment bang on, as you said. Kersons, Rooney, all of those ones. Donnelly, obviously they let go as well to Kidderminster. He could have been a good addition if given more time, but wasn't meant to be. Grimes came in. The player I like the most, though, is Frankie Maguire. 7 goals, 10 assists this season. Obviously now going on to pastures new. How will they replace him? But to finish 12th after 19th in their first season at the league, obviously the Great Escape one season. This season, they didn't have to do that because they made the decision to move the manager on at the right time. So I think the hierarchy deserve a lot of credit for that, because Cochran probably had something in the bank, but they decided, no, now is the time to make that change. They made it and they got it spot on and they finished in the top half. Job done.
Yeah, definitely job done. Mark, what did you make of Boston?
Well, 15 years in the making for Paul Hurst as well. I mean, it's been a long, long time coming. As you say, Graham Coughlin possibly did all he could after hauling them out of the relegation zone the season before. But Paul Hurst came in. I think Boston fans were really, really looking forward to seeing what would happen under him. And I don't think even the most ardent of Boston fans would have made the jump and how they did it. I mean, the recruitment, absolutely banger. Thomas Kersons, if only Harrogate had given him the chance. You never know. Until they may have stayed up in League Two, but they didn't because of pretty poor decisions like that. Give them the chance. Give them the opportunity to go and show what they can do. Give them a stretch of 10 games. Jake Rooney, who's been released by Derby County, will he be back at Boston United? He certainly did the job. Jamie Grimes, vastly experienced, and as you say, Frankie Maguire, one of the midfield gems in this league. If he does move on, then they'll have to find someone of equal quality, because Maguire was absolutely brilliant. But Hurst, yeah, got it by the scruff of the neck when it was absolutely needed. And 12th, yeah, pretty much an improvement on last season, up 7 places. So let's see what they can do. If they can replace Maguire sufficiently, they should have no problems. They'll have a full season of Kersons, and if they can get Jake Rooney, if they can convince him to come from Derby County, that might just be one of the signings of the season.
Yeah. Louis, what did you make of Boston this season?
Yeah, so obviously I'm the outlier again and being positive as I gave them the B. Yeah, ultimately I think it comes down to the point at the beginning of the season. If you'd have asked Boston fans where do you want to sit, they'd have probably said if you give us 19th again, would have been happy. And they finished 12th, so I think they've exceeded their expectations. If I was a Boston fan, I'd have said would have exceeded expectations. And they're comfortably mid-table. They didn't really until obviously Coughlin left because they were struggling relegation. But once Hurst came in, they never really looked over the shoulder. They kept on flying and were looking up towards the top end of the table and had some impressive performances, including their win at Forest Green Rovers. So full credit to Paul Hurst, who's done a fantastic job. And I think, that they exceeded their expectations. Didn't exceed them massively, which is why they're not higher than a B, but they exceeded them nonetheless, which is why they've got the B.
Yeah. Next up, we've got Forest Green, I believe. Yeah, I've given them a D, and my reason is I may be being a little bit harsh, but I just think with the money spent, the amount of players they've brought in, the way they started the season, and the way they tailed off to the back end, I think if there'd been maybe 4 or 5 more games back end of the season, they could have fell out of them playoff places. They literally crawled in. So for me, I think they've underachieved for what they've spent, what the expectations were. I know it's maybe a bit of a transitional season with Savage in charge and stuff like that, but for me, I think they underachieved, so that's why I've gave them a D. Mark, I'll come to you first. What did you make of Forest Green this season?
Giving them the B because I think it could have possibly been in the playoffs for Robbie Savage to have that job, first ever time in the National League. You couldn't ask for more. I mean, if it had gone on and won the league, then it would have been nothing short of amazing. But playoffs, you cannot argue when with the fact that when a club ends up in the playoffs, they've done well. They've done well to me. The signings, quite a lot of them, let's be honest. But for me, one of the key moments, what they did was signing Harry Eisted. He came in for when McNicholas got injured, and he did so well. Laurent Mendy, I've waxed lyrical about him all season. He was one of my very, very favourite players at Macclesfield. He's taken to the league like a duck to water. Ricardo Reis, you'll get to see the best of him next season. Damani Mella, but the two outstanding ones for me, Tom Knowles, Mr. Consistency, and the brilliant Kyle McAllister. Such penalty taker, makes things happen. Not a coincidence that Forest Green did have a bit of a ropey patch when McAllister wasn't in the squad. He holds that team together so well, and now they're gonna look to the new season. They've released quite a few players. Harvey Bunker, Eisted's gone, Innes has gone, Moore Taylor has gone. So how many do they need? I think they only need a handful of players because they've got a good nucleus there. John McMahon's still there as well. I'm a huge fan of his coaching because he did really well at Macclesfield when Robbie was in charge as well. But it'll be a big season for Forest Green. But I think, they did the job. It might have ended sooner than what they wanted, really. But yeah, I think they did okay. But next season, that'll be telling.
Yeah, Louis, what did you make of Forest Green this season?
Yeah, ultimately, even though it is a regression on the previous season, obviously finishing third under Steve Cottrell the previous year, seventh, as Mark said, getting in the playoff places is a success if you get in the playoffs. You look at the squad turnover, I know they've signed a lot of players, which does bring its own pressure onto it, because I think we said that when they were bringing a significant number of players in, that you're just adding more pressure onto yourselves. But the thing is, when you consider a number of those players like Laurent Mendy, Trey Pemberton, Temi Babiola, Ricardo Reis, they're all making a step up into the National League for the first time in their career. They're players that have played in the regional leagues for majority of their careers. Ricardo Reis played for Yeovil Town, I think it was. You've obviously got the two Mac lads that have come up from lower down the pyramid as well. And Temi Babiola, I think, was at Cheshire and Worthing, obviously, before we moved to Forest Green. So these are players that have made that step up, and it is a huge step up. Obviously, as Chris Agata said on our podcast, it's one of the biggest jumps around the south to the National League, and it's the same for the north to the National League as well. So I think in that sense, it's an improvement. Yes, they might have looked to have done more in the playoffs. I think they went out with a bit of a whimper in some respects because they didn't obviously finish the season that well. But then obviously they didn't, get through the eliminator of losing to Boreham Wood in extra time. So I think in that respect there'll be disappointment there, which is why it's not higher than a B. But I think a B is a respectable season when you consider it in the offset. The aim probably would have been to get in those playoffs, and I think you can judge this season better when you get to the end of last year, because if they progress from this season next year, then that's a success. If they regress, then this season looks terrible.
Yeah. Craig, what did you make of Forest Green this season?
Yes, I'm sorry to say that I disagree quite strongly with Louis and Mark on this one. It's not very often we all completely disagree, but for me, Savage found a winning formula quite early, and then just went crazy in the market when they didn't need to. They've regressed because they can't build a steady team. I think if they'd have finished fourth or fifth in the league, where they should have probably finished, because I don't think they were ever as good as York and Rochdale. I think not a false position being top of the league, but them two teams were always going to make that step up. But the chopping and the changing and the use of the loan market, I thought they got that wrong a lot. Other than obviously, I think it was Whitwell that went back. That was probably a big blow for them as well. I feel like he made quite a lot of mistakes that maybe he's been given the opportunity by the chairman that other managers maybe wouldn't have in that situation. They've been very relentless in the transfer market. But you look at the players' stats, they've played 10 games, right? He weren't good enough. He's been put in the bomb squad effectively, probably. And then 15 games, right? He's not good enough. Or 5 games. They were at their best when they had a consistent nucleus of the team. And then there's always going to be times where you can't have that team because of injuries, suspensions. But you don't go out and sign 45,000 players and expect success. The best teams have that consistent team, that consistent 11. Chris Agatha talked about, I know we mentioned him a lot tonight. He said when he had his best 14 players, he believed he could beat anybody in the league or at least compete against them. I think if you ask Savage for his best 11 this season, he wouldn't be able to give you the answer. And I think that's the most damning thing for them. I think the style's changed for the better. I think the fans are enjoying it more. There's all these good aspects. But ultimately, they finished third last season. This year, they finished seventh. They've signed too many players. The release list has got mistakes in it for me. And I think ultimately, it's been a bit of a disappointment in the end, especially how poor they were against Boreham Wood. And on that note, if Mr. Savage is listening, he can cross me off the Christmas card list now. I don't think I'm going to be on it much longer.
Yeah, and to be fair, I fully agree with Craig as well. So he can cross me off as well. I think I'm just going to pull Louis up on his scoring system a little bit here. So he said about Boston, and they'd finished higher than where they did last season. So he marked them up. But he's marked Forest Green up, and they finished lower than they did last season. Just a quick one. That's all. Everyone's entitled to their opinion.
Allow the man to defend himself.
I
Here.
am.
I think it's a degree to which there wasn't a transition for Boston in the summer. So obviously Cochran moved on. Obviously there was a huge transition in terms of ideals and playing style at Forest Green. So that's why I would say that's why they've got the B. And obviously they proved it on the pitch by finishing in the playoffs, and Boston didn't.
Yeah. Okay. Right. What was the score when Forest Green played Boston, guys? Anyone remember?
I praise Boston for that.
What was it? Just want to hear it from your mouth.
I can't remember the score, but I know they beat them.
Didn't they go there and win, like, was it 5-2, 5-3 or something like that?
I don't know. It's gone over my head.
Anyways, Louis is going to be defending himself again in a moment. So Halifax next. Louis, I'll come to you. You've gave them an A. Yeah, go for it, mate.
Ultimately, their expectation, obviously, at the beginning of the season would have been to push into those playoffs. They were unsuccessful in that sense. But I think when you look at the number of points they picked up, they picked up the same number of points that they did the previous season in a league that we've mentioned before was a difficult league this season and a harder league. They picked up more wins this season than they did the previous season, which is ultimately a success on the pitch because if you win more games, that is a success. And then you consider the off turn in the summer. They had Chris Millington that left behind. He was Many cited him as the reason why they were doing so well because of his consistent nature and his ability to build a side that was structurally sound and defensive and in some ways punching above their weight. They had a couple of turnover players as well. Adam Senior moved on to Barnet. So ultimately, I think in that sense, it is a success. Adam Lakeland said at the end of the season that they are punching above their weight, and the fact that he has left the club now suggests that he realises that, and the club potentially, I think, next season will be looking back on this season and think, Christ, we had a very good season this year. And they'll move on to next season and they'll realise their mistake in that sense. So that's why I've given them the A. Yes, I am generous, but that's just my opinion.
No, hey, I told you, I wish you were my school teacher. Craig, what did you make of Halifax this season?
Yeah, I've gone C because although there's a regression in the places, obviously I think the points were the same, if not slightly better. The top 6, 7, if you count Forest Green in there as well, have been relentless, especially the top 5. They've managed to recruit well. Harris, Hamani. Obviously, Hamani dropped off after January where he didn't get his move. So there'd be interesting what happens there. I think if you'd have said to me where are they going to finish, I think I said 9th. So for them to finish 8th, I'm pretty happy with that. I think they're always going to be that nearly team at the minute. They're punching above their weight, but they're doing it consistently. It's just what they do again this summer. Every summer for them, you worry it's going to get ripped apart and how will it start again? They've managed to start again quite well, but you've seen it with teams in the past. I'm going to go for a Premier League example here. Southampton. I feel like Halifax are the National League. Southampton, they keep getting close to them next stages. They can't take the next step because their team gets ripped apart every season and eventually hit caught up with Southampton. But less about the Premier League or Championship teams and back to the National League teams. Halifax will recruit again. They will go again, and I bet them to probably finish about the same place. But next season, for me, will be very open that it will be their best possibility to get back into the playoffs.
Yeah, definitely worry about Harris, Hamami, Turner Cook as well. Like key players, if they all go, they've got some serious rebuild to do. And not to mention, at the time of recording, we don't know who the manager's going to be either next season. So there has been reports of McGrath, so it might be him, but he's got a big job on his hands. Mark, what did you make of Halifax?
Yeah, I mean, you say about the team being ripped apart. They've already had the management ripped apart with Adam Lakeland going to Morecambe, which was a very what has gone so wrong at Halifax that Morecambe's the better prospect. Only Adam Lakeland can tell us that. Yes, they have been linked with John McGrath at Buxton. Even Mike Williamson. I know Dan is a massive fan of Mike Williamson. Even he's been mentioned too. Well, I don't know what sort of football they want there, but it'll be an interesting one. But they got a great nucleus there. I mean, they got Ash Palmer on loan, which is a masterstroke, vast experience. If they can get him to sign full time next season, then their defence will be a little more gelled. But Josh Hamami, will he move on? I mean, it was a bit of a botch in January when he tried to get the move. It didn't materialise, sort of tail between his legs. Jay Turner-Cook, that standout in the midfield, but the standout, the free transfer from Spennymoor, Will Harris. I remember watching him play against Mac in a pre-season friendly, and he did so well. And I think it was after that he actually signed. 20-odd goals, not to be sniffed at from a player who's never played at that level before. Adam Lakeland, not really been at National League level before. Harris will go on to bigger and better things. But with Lakeland gone, I don't know. They have to get the managerial appointment right. But I think the Halifax fans deserve to know as well why. Why was he allowed to go so easily? What's gone on there? It's sort of a mystery to me. But he did well. He did very, very well for that for the season he's just had. 8th is very respectable. I mean, it's got me a C, but then again, I mean, there's teams 8th and finished 8th, 9th, 10th, that got a C as well. I don't know. They've just got to get it right, but they've got to do it fast as well because time is ticking.
Yeah. Louis? Oh, no, I've already spoke to you about Halifax, haven't I? It's getting long now, guys. Right. Next, have I spoke to you, Craig? I can't remember.
Yes.
Yeah. Right. We're going into the Bs now. Wealdstone, I believe, is next. Yeah. So as you can see there, I've gave them a B. Craig's gave them a B. Louis a B, but Mark's gave him a D. So we'll start with Mark. Why a D for Wealdstone?
Started off so brightly, and then I just don't know. I just don't know what the dip in form. I'll say about the whole thing with I can't remember his name, who went to the Baller League without telling them.
Saka-san.
That's him, Saka-san. Unnecessary. Remember who you play for. The Baller League does not pay your wages. Wealdstone do. I think there was a complete and utter lack of respect there. And ultimately, Sam Cox was doing the business, but it just they started to drop. They needed the change. They had to go for the experience of Gary Waddock, and he brought the stability back. He dragged them up. Wasn't going to reach the heights that they started the season with, but he got them to the FA Trophy final. He can take credit for that. But the league is your bread and butter, really, and it just it just wasn't quite. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't brilliant either. I think the excitement of them, the start that they made to the season, might have caught a few people on the hop. But yeah, I mean, from going from the top positions down to 15th, no, it just didn't. That don't work for me, brother. But with Waddock at the helm, this season. Give them the experience, get them to calm down. No more monkey business off the field. Get them. But yeah, it was just a bit of a disappointment the way they went about it, really.
Yeah, Louis, what did you make of Wealdstone this season?
Yeah, ultimately at the beginning of the season, I had them predicted to finish bottom, so egg on my face in that respect. I think generally as a season, they've done really well. If you take out a period of time just before Sam Cox was sacked, I think it was one win in 12 or one win in 13. And I think they went into that game away at Braintree when they won 4-1, thinking they need to win that game to have a chance of pulling themselves clear. But if you take out that poor run of form, they were ultimately, mid-table, lower top half side, and obviously got an FA Trophy final as well on the back of it as well. So I think it's a successful season in that sense. A lot of players who have had successful seasons, obviously Kaji, Olamola, can't remember that Barrio up front has got a good total for his goals this season as well. So individual standout performances from them as well. So I think for a club of their size, part-time hybrid club that are consistently pushing above their weight, I think it's a good performance this season. 15th is a respectable performance for them.
Yeah, I agree, mate. I agree. Craig?
Yeah, I think what I'm going to say to Mark is he's maybe let a bit of recency bias get into that one, because I think if they'd have been 15th the whole season, you'd have given them a B or a C. I think the fact that they were good earlier is maybe you've under gave them a bit less than they deserve, in my opinion, because as Louis said, everyone's had them to get relegated or to be very close. Last season they survived on the last day. The fact that they didn't really have a relegation trouble, as Louis said, they went into the Braintree game thinking, right, if we lose this, we've got to look over our shoulder, and they battered us 4-1 and were magnificent that day. They got to an FA Trophy final. Like, Wealdstone's ambitions are not going to be the same as the Southend's or York's or Carlisle's. It was probably to finish 19th, 20th, to finish 15th and never really have any relegation worries and get to a final at Wembley, which obviously they lost today. It's an unbelievable season. For me, it was torn whether I'm giving them an A or a B.
Yeah, I was the same. It was between A and B for me as well. Next up, I believe we've got Southend. Yeah, so as you can see, we've got a little bit of a mix on here. Craig, I'll come back to you first. C for Southend.
Yeah, if you look at the league positions, it's pretty much as they came. They've gone up one position. I think they obviously got that on the last couple of days, going above Forest Green. But ultimately, they've done worse this season than last season. Last season, they got to the playoff final. This year, they got eliminated in the Eliminator. They did win the FA Trophy today, which is fair play to them and a big achievement. But ultimately, Southend should be thinking bigger than the FA Trophy. They should be trying to get back out of this league and back into the EFL, where a club of their size ultimately belongs, probably. Although you could argue no club belongs anywhere they are where they are for a reason. But a lot of their reasons were obviously off the pitch. That's been sorted over the last couple of years. For me, we backed them to finish fourth. I think every single one of us had us to finish the best of the rest after Rochdale, York, Carlisle. And without a good run of form towards the end of the season, they may have missed out to Halifax. I think they obviously beat them by 11 points at the end. But it was decided with 2 or 3 games to go. And yeah, I was just a bit underwhelmed by them, to be honest with you. Like, I didn't think they were amazing. They weren't shocking by any stretch of the imagination. Of course, they finished in the playoffs and won the FA Trophy. It sounds like a successful season. But for me, they were just a little bit underwhelming.
Yeah, I agree, mate. Mark, what did you make of Southend?
Spluttered along. I mean, I've given them the B. Again, you reach the playoffs, then you've done something right. But boy, did they make hard work of it. My goodness gracious me. They just, every time they had the opportunity to pull clear, they just didn't seem to want to do that. And it's baffling. I mean, yeah, you see what the talent they've got: Gus Scott Morris, Charlie Kendall. For example, they've signed Harry Cardwell permanently from Forest Green, Parallon as well, and I just don't understand how they've managed to make such hard work of it. They had the opportunities. I know they had about 100 games against Rochdale, but that's by the bys. But every time they had the chance to secure it, they either drew or lost it. They spluttered into the playoffs, which for a club with their talented pool of players should be doing better. Harry Boys, I haven't mentioned until now, but the FA Trophy win today. We are recording on the Sunday after the final. That should propel them for next season. But there's still a lot of fans who are not convinced by Kevin Mayer. They acknowledge the fact that he is a Southend legend, but has he taken them as far as they can go? And then again, you have to ask the question: where do you go from there? It's very easy to answer one question, but it's even harder to ask the next, because you don't know what the next question is going to be. And really, for Southend, they should have been up there in the fourth, really challenging the likes of York, Rochdale, giving and pushing Carlisle. But again, commendable, but oh God, sometimes it was really, really hard to watch.
Louis, what are your thoughts on Southend?
Yeah, ultimately, I think today gives them the B grade because they've won a domestic trophy for the first time in their history. That's a success in its own record. They reached the playoffs, which could be deemed a success. Obviously, as Craig said, I think we all have them down as fourth, so it's a regression on that sense. But they got there, and if they'd have performed on the day against Scunthorpe, I think that's probably their biggest disappointment, is that the fact that they went out of the playoffs with a whimper, and they they were inconsistent. They started the season quite well. I think they performed really well at the start of the season, and they were towards the top end of the table. And I think there was a degree to which the fixture back pile looked like it could have been something that was going to affect them with the postponements, with the cup games that they were having. So overall, I think to get in the playoffs, they've done a solid job. They've done what is at least expected from them to get into those playoffs. Because I think if they'd have fallen out of those playoffs, it would have been a really, really poor season on that front. And I think we wouldn't have seen Kevin Mayer potentially ending the season if they hadn't have got there. So yeah, I think a B is fair enough, but yeah, they'll expect more next season.
Yeah, definitely. Next up, we've got Carlisle, I believe. So we've obviously got a bit of a mix there, couple of C's, couple of B's. Craig, what did you make of Carlisle this season?
Yeah, I think 95 points is no doubt a good achievement, and it should really be enough for an A. But obviously, the heights of the first two teams we'll come on to later, they were incredible, and Carlisle couldn't keep pace with them. And it's how they got to the 95 points. It was the style. It was slamming the handbrake on when you're 2-0 up and then drawing 2-2 and all those kind of things. In terms of first season back, it's been a good lesson for them. I think they've learnt loads from it and will be equipped to go again next season. So yeah, I think they're in a good place. But ultimately, they fell short of where they wanted to be. They wanted an instant bounce back. They didn't get it because of how good York and Rochdale were. And then they got 14,000 in for the playoff final and flat to deceive massively. But a B is a sign of that if they get things right next season, they can be one of the leading teams in this league, no doubt.
Yeah. Louis, what did you make of Carlisle this season?
Yeah, ultimately finished third place, which I had them predicted in that sense to finish there. I think when you look at their record against the bottom half teams, we've spoken about it all season, it was pretty much flawless. And again, it was against those sides in and around them. Didn't beat Boreham Wood, didn't beat York, didn't beat Rochdale. That comes back to bite them. But as Craig said, 95 points is no shame. To finish in third place with 95 points, most other seasons it would win you the title. It's just the context of this season that it shows how good York and Rochdale were. And I think the playoff semi-final sums up the season, is that you weren't good enough to beat the rest of the teams around you. And ultimately, that's why I give you a B instead of what would be an A for most other teams if they'd have got some 95 points. And I think the size of the squad, the quality that the squad has got, they should have been competing more, because we never really spoke about them in the title race past November, December, which I think sums up the whole reason why they've been given, well, none of us are giving them an A. So I think that's the reason why.
Yeah, definitely. Mark?
Well, they did better than the previous season, put it that way. But yeah, again, the lads have gone on about it as well. They would have been more up there, I think, should they have gotten past your Boreham Woods and everybody around you. The signing of Linney, you can say it's a successful one. probably didn't get as many goals as what he hoped for, but he did have a few injuries as well. The signing of Con Clark, well, it didn't quite work. Put it that way. He's a talented boy, Chris Con Clark. He just needs to put his production in there somewhere. But the standout player for me, we've gone on about him quite a lot, Morgan Feeney. What a guy! What a defender! What a defender! Easily Carlisle's player of the season for me. And now it's where do they go from here? They've had a massive clear out in the summer. The recruitment, Mark Tierney's going to have a he must be keeping an eye on a lot of players to improve Carlisle because as Rochdale and York have done, it's let's get out of this league. We might not have done it last season. Let's make this season the season to do it. And that is the attitude that Carlisle have to take. Not sort of a win or bust situation, but let's have a real go at it. They've seen the highs, they've seen the lows, they've gone over the bumps, they've gone over the jumps. So now it'll be a crucial summer for Carlisle. But 95 points, it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy that you don't get anything for 95 points. It really is. But yeah, they get the recruitment right, then we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, I've gave them a C, and my reasoning is, I think we've got 95 points, but a lot of them, if you look at the isolated results, Louis says our results against the bottom half teams were good, but you look at a lot of them, they were by the odd goal, there were scrappy games. There's a few that spring straight to mind, like Truro, Braintree, Boston away. There was a few where it was late goals, scrappy games, that in another season, that could potentially go wrong. So for me, I think we relied a lot on moments, and we come unstuck against the better sides. And when I say that, I'm not even just talking about Boreham, like Woking come up here and played us off the park. I think that was like December time. Boreham Wood, obviously, we took 1 point off them over 3 games. We'd lost the other 2, including the playoff game. Lost to Rochdale both times, didn't score a goal. Lost to York and got hammered both times, didn't score a goal. And ultimately, every Carlisle fan before the season started was we had to win the league. We had to go up. And we failed. We didn't even get to the playoff final. Yeah, we got in the playoffs. But I think I called it on here, as soon as we came up against anyone half decent that can play a few passes, get in behind us, and we come unstuck. And I think it was Craig who mentioned about we got the big crowd at Brunton Park, built it up as the biggest game of the season, which it was. And for the first 45 minutes, we didn't turn up. And that happened a lot this season. And people get carried away because obviously I've watched us every week pretty much, whereas some people don't, and they'll just look at the result or look at the 95 points or look at XG and all that kind of stuff. And it's the eye test for me. And I think we've really lacked in a lot of areas this season. Morgan Feeney's been a standout, which is what Mark said. And he's effectively been doing the job of 2 defenders because he hasn't had a solid centre-back next to him all season. Regan Linney was great at the start, found form again at the end of the season, but in the middle it dipped. So I wouldn't even say he was a brilliant signing. Like he's been one of the reasons we finished where we were, but he did dip in the middle of the season. Recruitment, apart from that, I would say has been poor, and that is something that we've struggled with the last couple of years as well. You look at who we brought in. Con Clark didn't work out. Galvin at left back, jury's still out for me. We brought in. I'm trying to think. Gilead, who was good, I suppose. But then you look at Adjuboy. Yeah, he found his feet eventually, but had a really slow start. There's a lot of players in there where you look and you go, the recruitment's not been great. So the summer's massive for us because I think next season, without Rochdale and York in the league, I think the league's wide open. So I reckon if we get 95 points or anywhere around that again next season, I think that'll be enough to take us up. So we just need to see what happens, but we need clarity on the manager situation first because no one really knows what's going on with Mark Hughes at the moment. There's a lot of rumours, things up in the air, but there's no clarity from the club as yet. So we'll wait and see. Next up, I believe we've got Tamworth. Yeah, Tamworth. Great season for Tamworth. Mark, what did you make of Tamworth this season?
Yeah, just where I expected them to be. I mean, the great thing about Tamworth is you don't know what you're going to get. I've given them the C. I mean, they've finished 10th last season, 11th this season. So, yeah, mid-table, middle prediction. They didn't really let the departure of Dan Creaney affect them that much because they got him back eventually as well. Unfortunate it didn't work out for him, but great for Tamworth to get somebody who knows where the back of the net is. He'll be on firing for them next season. But Andy Peake was getting them up there. I mean, they were up there with the playoff contenders as well. I mean, that's a testament to Andy Peake's character as a manager. Getting somebody as unlikely as Tamworth, getting him up there. Obviously, Tom Tonks, the lethal weapon with his long throws, the unpredictability, but they could play some good stuff as well. It's I believe that they've been taken over by an American consortium now. What will come? Will they go full time? Will the mystique of how Tamworth actually are? Will that suddenly disappear? Will it help them? Will this takeover be of an absolute benefit? It's going to be very intriguing for Tamworth. Nobody likes playing them. They're a side, very, very bullish, if you will. But now that they've actually got some serious investment behind them, they can actually have a serious look and think, right, this is what, the playoffs challenging for the title. Maybe that's where they want to be. That it will certainly be the dream of the new owners. So let's see what goes there. But yeah, pretty standard from Tamworth, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, definitely. Louis, what did you make of Tamworth this season?
Yeah, I think it's been an exceptional season considering. I mean, I think everyone at the club would probably have said if we stay up, it's a successful season. Obviously, it's a part-time club, one of the only part-time clubs in the National League, came up from the National League North 2 seasons ago, and they're consistently punching above their weight. The fact that we didn't speak about them in a relegation battle throughout the season is testament to how good they've been. Sometimes a lot of teams get found out in their second season. Obviously, second season syndrome is a thing, but that just didn't seem to be the case for Tamworth. Lost Dan Creaney in the summer. Obviously, I think it was Beckley Anuru went to Notts County halfway through the season as well. So it's another player that they lost that was of good quality. And they just rode all the waves that hit them. They did the double over Boreham Wood. They beat Forest Green. They beat Carlisle. Yeah, they just rode with the punches. And I think for a club of the size that they are, for the balance that they've got, the squad that they've got, the ground that they've got, everything that you can take into account for that football club, they are seriously punching above their weights to be at points of the season considered as a playoff potential. So full credit to Andy Peakes, full credit to Tamworth. That's why I've given them the A.
Yeah. Craig, what did you make of Tamworth this season?
Yeah, I haven't really got too much to add because the reasons Louis gave them the A is why I've gave them the B. They've been punching above their weight. If you look at it solely on paper, they were 10th and now they're 11th. They're where they were. But that's punching above their weight. I had him to go down. I had second season syndrome playing a big factor there. And it never did. They were never close. They obviously recruited well. Lynch and Moles chipping in with lots of goals for them. Like Louis said, Beckley Anuru was a fantastic prospect for them, and they sold him on for a profit. They're everything they're everything I want Braintree to be. They're the perfect model for a team that comes up. If you ask Hornchurch who they should model themselves on next year, it's Tamworth. Be the best part-time team, make yourself hard to beat. They put everything like that. I know they've got the 4G pitch and that, but they play into it. They play into what works for them, and fair play to them. I've wrote them off too many times before that I won't be doing that again. Credit to them. They're a fantastic outfit and fair play to them.
Yeah, I like the way they handle themselves as well. I remember when they came up here and the players were in the pub after the game and stuff like that. Really good football club, I think. And we talk about players. I'm a big fan of Stephen Moles and Oliver Lynch as well that they brought in. He got goals as well back end of the season. So recruitment's been big for them. I believe we're going into our A's now and we've got Scunthorpe. So everyone's given them an A apart from me. So I'm going to explain myself first before the Scunthorpe fans come for me because we know we have a good relationship. I only gave them a B. They've had a fantastic season. I only gave them a B just because I think the teams that I've given A to, I didn't want to give too many A's away, like Louis. I wanted to keep them for teams that I thought were just, you know, the outstanding teams. So I think Scunthorpe were just a little bit short of the 3 teams I've gave my A's to. But they take nothing away from it. The Callum Roberts, Danny Whitehall, the attacking talent they've got, Ollie Ewing. There's so many players in that team that you think they're destined for big things. We'll see what happens with Callum Roberts in the summer and stuff. So big credit to them. But I just wanted to explain my B. They could have easily got an A as well. Craig, Scunthorpe.
Yeah, I do kind of agree with you that there maybe is a little step up to the next 3, so I can fully understand the B on that one. But I've been generous on this one. I have given the A, and I think they deserve it. If you'd have said to the majority of people where a Scunthorpe were going to finish, I don't think we had them as relegation fodder, but I don't think we saw them having the season they were having as well. Bar Mr. Sharpley, I'll let him get that one. For every Scunthorpe mark, there's always a Truro, though, isn't there?
And there's a Braintree too.
But no, they've been really, really good. I still think they've got gears to go up. I think they'll be looking at this season and going, we could have done a little bit more. We could have been better in stages, because I think they did have them little wobbles. But for a team that's just come up to finish in the playoffs of the next season, get through the eliminator against a Southend side that most of us backed to beat them, and then come up against a team that's got as many points as Rochdale did, and ultimately then fall short, then it's worthy of a very, very good season. For them, next season will be a lot harder, because obviously a lot more expectation will be on them, and can they sustain this? And I think with a few signings they can. I think they need some defensive reinforcements, maybe another magic player, because Roberts will move on. But yeah, I'm very, very impressed with them, and I think that I'd give them an A-B in between. If there was an in between, I'd give them that, but I've gone for the A.
Yeah, it's understandable, mate. Louis, what did you make of Scunthorpe this season?
Yeah, ultimately going on the rankings logic, if I've given teams like Southend and Forest Green a B, I think Scunthorpe have to be an A in this sense, because they finished above them, because of the expectation potentially at the beginning of the season for them not to be in this position, having come up from the National League North and won the playoffs. I think when you look at the job that Butler's done, it's an outstanding. It's not the biggest squad in the world, but he's got a tune out of his players. They obviously competed against the sides in and around them. They beat York this season. They beat Boreham Wood. They got a point off Rochdale. They beat Forest Green. I think they beat Southend as well. They got a point off them as well. So they competed, and they did really well against the sides in and around them. And ultimately, they fell short, but it wasn't too far short, because when you come up against the juggernaut that is Rochdale with 107 points at their ground in the playoff semi-final, there is no shame in losing that game. So I think full credit to them. They fully deserve the position that they got at the end of the season, and I think it's been a cracking season for them. And I think next season, as Craig said, the expectation will be on them, and it'll be a more difficult season, because even though the fans do have high expectations, there being an ex-championship side, it's going to rank up next year. And I think even though there are calls for Butler's Head next year, there'll be a lot more next year, considering what it's like.
Yeah, definitely. Mark, what did you make of Scunthorpe?
Well, I took a gamble at the start of the season by predicting that they'd have the season that they've just had, and it's paid off in spades. They've done it once. Now let's see them do it again, because now the hopes are going to be much, much higher. But I mean, the players. I mean, Callum Roberts. I cannot praise that guy enough. For me, one of the players of the season. Will he stay? It's looking might be unlikely. If they can persuade him to come on and lead a promotion charge next season, then they've already got it made. But Ollie Ewing in midfield, he was very, he came in and did exceptionally well. They've got Pat Jones, the winger from Chester. So much potential with him. Danny Whitehall, again, another favourite of mine, will always score your goals. They gave Declan Howe the chance he deserved, and he did it. He did fine. He did absolutely fine, Declan Howe. Again, signing, it's not everybody's cup of tea, but I don't care. I've watched Declan Howe a lot when he played for Gainsborough, so he knows where the back of the net is. But Andy Butler was got to be up there for manager of the season. to do so well, because Brackley came up as champions and went straight back down. A lot of people might have looked at Scunthorpe and didn't think that they would do the same, but they just taken to it like a duck to water. I mean, they were just carrying on from the previous season. But now here comes the difficult bit. Are they going to carry on this season into the next season? If Roberts does go, it's just going to make that job a little more difficult. But as I say, Pat Jones, they will see the best of him next season. I have absolutely no doubt about that. And if they can keep hold of Andy Butler as well, because there's got to be some eyes looking at him, for the job that he's done. But yeah, absolutely an outstanding season from Scunthorpe. But as I say, you did it once. Now let's see you do it again.
Yeah, definitely. Next up, I believe we've got Boreham Wood next. Yeah, I mean, unanimous across the board. A's from everybody. I remember in our mid-season one, we did do an A star, didn't we? And I'm sure we all gave it to Boreham Wood. We're not doing A stars this time because we didn't think it was fair to just pick one team because there's been so many outstanding teams. But Boreham Wood, absolutely outstanding. Can't sing their praises enough. Luke Garrard, incredible. Obviously signed a new deal as well. Abdul Malik, who we had on the podcast. Yeah, massive credit to them. Louis, what did you make of Boreham Wood?
Yeah, I think ultimately when you've got, I think it was 2 or 3 players in the team of the season, you're ultimately going to be a good side, and that's what Boreham Wood were to be. Was it 10 seconds, 5 seconds away from the Football League, having come up from National League South last year is an outstanding achievement. It's a manager that we've waxed lyrical about all season. He knows how to get a result from his team, and I think the impressive thing is, as we mentioned on previous podcasts, the way he changed his team throughout the season, the way he changed his style of play from when they were previously in the National League. I think that adds to how impressive this campaign has been for them. And yeah, as you say, I think an A star would have been fitting for them because I don't think anybody had them to have 90 points at the end of the season. I don't think anybody had them to be in the playoffs, and I don't think any of them had them to be in and around the challenge for the title at one point, because they were around Christmas time. They were challenging for that title, and they obviously beat the best around them. They beat York 3-2 at home. They did the double. They did got 4 points over Carlisle. They beat Forest Green, I believe. They obviously beat them in the eliminator. They went up to Brunton Park in the semi-final as well and did the job on them there. So it's an outstanding effort from them. And yeah, Luke Garrett, 3 more years. What more can we see from Boreham Wood? Because it's going to be an interesting season next year to see whether they can keep the players that we've spoken about, the likes of Zach Brunt, Abdul Malik, Matt Rush, but also can they build on what they've done already? Because there'll be a sense of expectation on what to expect next season.
Yeah, just in case anyone's wondering, my device is going to die, so I'll have to run and get a charger. So it's the most exercise I've done since I was at school. So, Mark, what did you make of Boreham Wood this season?
Fantastic. Again, they finished 5th in the National League South, the playoff winners. Hornchurch, Kidderminster, Fylde, and Worthing. Look to what Scunthorpe and Boreham Wood have done this season. Anything is possible when you put your mind to it. And again, Luke Garrard is the manager of the season. He's certainly my manager of the season. And I've said it a couple of times. How could you miss him if he wouldn't go away? He went away. He's come back to Boreham Wood and has revitalised Boreham Wood. Zach Brunt, 40 goal assists. 40 goal assists. That's unbelievable at any level. Yeah, whether it be in this country or in Europe. The wonderful Abdul Malik, a proper winger who can turn the game just like that. Tom White, who they got from Morecambe, which surprised a lot of people at the time, but he skippered them. His experience, that defensive midfield qualities that he's got, and let's not not disregard what Jeff King did there when he was on loan from York. He did that well that he needed to, that York got him back. So what did they go and do? They looked at Solihull and thought, oh, I'll tell you what, we'll have James Clark, and a player who is just as good as Jeff King. Yeah, Matt Rush, 27 league goals this season. You couldn't have asked for anything more. So, yeah, grade A all the way.
Yeah, definitely fantastic season for Boreham Wood and Matt Rush. Craig, what did you make of Boreham Wood this season?
Yeah, we obviously spoke about them before the playoff final. I've been very, very impressed. And what I've been impressed with that they started the season pretty much with the core of last season, with a few additions, but then the likes of Zach Brunt have come in and a few others along the way, and they've really changed that midfield up and still gone from strength to strength to only be seconds away from promotion to the EFL in their first season back here. And the way they've done it, obviously Garrett Ball, it used to be associated, it wasn't the most free-flowing style of football. This season it really has been, and they've been a fantastic team to watch. And yeah, Brunt, I think it's 31 goal involvements in the league, over 40 in all competitions, is incredible and in contention for player of the season for me. But ultimately, they have fallen short. So just as we talked about Scunthorpe, will they be able to go again next season? How much will their squad get picked apart? They've got the financial resources, and the fact that just a day or two afterwards, Garrett obviously was announced as staying for another 3 years, or at least having a 3-year contract, obviously. That's a big news for them. And that might give those players the incentive to stay and give it one more crack next season as well. But yeah, they'll be looking at the league and thinking, we're as good as anyone left in this. We can win this next year. But yeah, A for me, fantastic season from them.
Yeah, and if anyone hasn't watched our sit-down interview with Abdul Malik as well, that's available to watch as well. Really enjoyed that. He's got a very bright future ahead of him. Next up, I believe we've got Rochdale, obviously finished second. Again, A's across the board. Can't really argue with any of that. I think they were absolutely outstanding. Signing the Manny D, those goals that he scored, I think were the difference. Ultimately scored some really big goals. You know, the one away at Braintree. Sorry, Craig. The one in the against York, I know it didn't work out, and then obviously the one in the playoff final as well. I think that was the real difference for them. Louis, what did you make of Rochdale?
Yeah, I think it's just so impressive how quickly they started the season. They obviously had that defeat to Brackley on Easter Monday, not Easter Monday, Bank Holiday Monday that we spoke about. But apart from that, they were seamless throughout, and then lost to Halifax at home. And it looked like they were just going to storm the league, and it was a chase that York had to put on because of the amount of points that Rochdale were racking up and racking up and racking up, and it was just win after win after win, with very few draws at the beginning of the season, I remember. So it was an incredible pace setting for them. And then when you look towards the start of the year, when they had, I can't remember how many games it was in such a short period of time. I think it might have been 7 games in 21 days or something ridiculous like that. They managed to win sort of 6 out of 7 of them, or 7 out of 7, and they just kept going and going and going. And I guess eventually there was going to be a tail off in some respects, but it's a tail off from a very high height, and it allowed York back in. But I mean, as a season, to get 107 points is outstanding, and pretty much any other season, apart from one or two, would win you the title. So absolutely outstanding from Jimmy McNulty to do it with the squad he's got as well. When you consider the money that York have got, I think it's a complete chalk and cheese in some respects, where everyone kind of expected York to get to the 100 points this year. But I think for Rochdale to get to 100 points, to pass 100 points, and then to go again in the playoffs after they had that fall off on the last day of the season. I mean, this is a bigger achievement for Rochdale. I think obviously we'll come on to York, but I think it's a bigger achievement for Rochdale to do what they did than what York did. And I think, yeah, you could put them in an A-star category as well, but an A for them and fully deserved place in the Football League next season.
Yeah, I think the thing that impressed me the most with Rochdale was that they picked themselves up after conceding that late goal against York and went again in the playoffs and won and went up. And I think that was the most impressive thing they done this season. Mark, what were your thoughts on Rochdale?
Well, I did say throughout the season, the irresistible force meets the immovable object. And Rochdale were the immovable object. They're so workmanlike. A very, very, very solid set of players. I mean, I'll start with Oliver Watmuff. What a find in the loan market. I mean, willing to take a chance in a very rough and ready league. An 18-year-old goalkeeper, and he is just he is without doubt the goalkeeper of the season for Rochdale. Very confident. I mean, they signed him as a 17-year-old. He's now 18, but it's like he's been playing for years. Yeah, it shows absolute confidence. It was at the start of the season. It was an interesting battle between him and Harvey Cartwright at Hartlepool. But yeah, absolutely one of the finds of the loan market, an absolute gem. Whoever gets him next season, there's a true talent there. Kyron Gordon, Sam Beckwith, then he got injured, so they brought in Callum Perry. And again, another outstanding youngster. And it's the trust. It's not the reliance on the youngsters. It's the trust that Jimmy McNulty, being a former defender himself, puts in these players, and they pay him back in spades. You've got your midfield, Harvey Gilmore, Casey Petit as well. Had to wait for his chance when he moved from Maidenhead, and he took it. Joe Pritchard, again, not everybody's cup of tea, but he's come on and he's served Rochdale well when he has played, whether it be in the first team from the start or off the subs bench. But you've got your player of the season, Manny Disarue. Try and get his name right, but 25 goals, vast experience. They had, Rochdale had the lot, and they went about it all right. They had a couple of wobbles. The 4-2 loss against Morecambe was certainly a shock, but they kept plugging away. It was heartbreaking, the final game of the season against York, but they did not let it affect them. That was the mentality that Jimmy McNulty has put into them. They took it by the scruff of the neck. This was their time, 107 points, and yeah, brilliant. They and York set the standard for this league, and a lot of teams will have to follow that.
Yeah, definitely. Craig, what did you make of Rochdale?
Yeah, I think the mentality monsters that they are deserve so much plaudits. Like, if you just ignore the last game and the playoffs, it's an incredible season nonetheless. But to go through the highs and the lows of that final day, especially the lows, and then be able to pick yourself up and win the playoffs, and even in the playoff final be seconds away from losing and just finding a way is just incredible. Mark's mentioned so many names, but what I will say with them as well is with the Watmuff move, what a sign of trust they've shown in him that other league clubs, Man City, when they've got these good options, these good young players, they're going to be thinking, well, Rochdale will nurture that talent for us. So it's opened probably more doors for them in the future as well with that one as well. But yeah, just the fact that they just kept going and going and going. When they had their dip towards the end of the season, you were right. York, if York beat them on the final day, I can't get them to the playoffs again. One of the things Mark got right is he saw them going again in the playoffs, and massive credit for them, because that is so hard. And for me, that is the achievement of the season, to get 107 points, lose the league in the way they did, and be able to bounce back. That's A-star worthy. That's incredible for them. And I'll miss both York and Rochdale because they've both been incredible sides. But York, you always feel they had that little bit more individual quality, but Rochdale had that togetherness, that team spirit, that really something where everyone was put in the same direction. That's not me saying York don't have it, but Rochdale, I don't think have got quite that wow factor that York have got. So to get how many points they did with togetherness and working hard and rolling up your sleeves, it's outstanding for them. And yeah, they deserve all the plaudits they get. And as much as we enjoy the fan bases of both of these teams, I don't expect to see them back here for a while, because I think they both do really well in League Two.
Yeah, I agree. I think both teams will do well next season. And then last definitely not least, we've got York. Again, A's across the board. I know we all kind of expected it from York, but I don't think any of us expected it to be as, relentless as it was. They had a bit of a wobble at the start, obviously changed managers, but Stuart Maynard found a way to play Josh Stones and Ollie Pearce together, found a way to make it work, and they were just blowing teams away, and it continued throughout the season. And when they weren't blowing teams away, they were scoring late goals, keeping clean sheets, especially late on. I remember there was 1-0 against Woking, there was a couple of 1-0s, 2-0s where they were keeping clean sheets, and that was normally what we were associating with Rochdale at the time. So they did have strings to their bow as well. So massive credit to York, deserving champions. Craig, what did you make of York?
Yeah, A-star for A for Maynard, A for Ollie Pearce and all these goals, A for getting Stones and Pearce in the same team, A for probably the best defender in the league in Malachi Fagan-Walcott. A for the Ugglers. Like, what a brave decision it was to get rid of Hinchelworth after 4 games after he got 96 points, and obviously he's done well at Worthing. Would he have got them up? Maybe, who knows? Obviously there was a few issues on and off the pitch, Jeff King being a key one on that obviously they never really saw eye to eye from. We only sent him off to Boreham Wood where he done fantastic, but it was a big part of it. They've just been outstanding. Like, if you take away them first 4 or 5 games, and even probably the first 3 or 4 of Maynard's spell, if you turn them into what Maynard had them after 30, 40 games, that's probably another 15 points on the board that they could have got. So they could have been close to 120, 130, which is incredible figures. And that's how good they were. If they ever lost, they just came back relentlessly the week afterwards. You think when they lost to Gateshead and Boreham Wood at stages, it was like, right, next week they'll win and they get a clean sheet. When Malachi Fagan-Walcott was out, Zach Johnson came into the team. They found a place for both of them in the team. Obviously, Morgan Williams came in as well. Their recruitment, yes, they've had money. There's no doubt there's no point lying about that. But you can have the money and you can buy a load of rubbish. They've bought the right players. They've found ways to make it work. Like we said, the Pearce Stones conundrum. Which one's going to play? Can they play together? They found a way. Maynard found a way. Massive credit for him. There's a few moments in there where you think it's not going to go so well for them. It's going to be tough really early on. There was a couple of games where they started maybe to draw a couple, and then they just went bang, and they were relentless. And absolutely fair play to them. They're mentality monsters as well, because obviously to pick themselves off the floor after the 95th minute Manny D goal to then go again. Granted, they got a little bit of time to regroup because of the pitch invasion, but then to go again. And I honestly think, what's their ceiling next season in League Two? And I think there is no ceiling for them. They can easily go up again. They're easily good enough. They're hungry in the transfer market. They recruit well. There's no doubt about that. Why wouldn't you want to be a player that comes to York right now? There's a big attraction there. They're a good team that are going to do things. I see them in League One within 3 years, if not back-to-back. It wouldn't surprise me back-to-back. So yeah, A for them, A for the Ugglers for the decision, A for Maynard for getting Stones and Pearce together. Outstanding.
Yeah, definitely. And stay tuned over the coming weeks. We may have some exclusive York-related podcasts coming your way as well. So stay tuned for that.
Don't go anywhere.
Yeah, don't go anywhere, York fans, just yet. Plan for League Two in a few weeks' time. Louis, what did you make of York, mate?
Yeah, I think Craig summed it up really well. I think the fact that we got a point on there at the first day of the season kind of sums up where they were at that point, but also how incredible it is that they've been since then. I mean, I think they lost to Scunthorpe at home 3-1 on the 1st of October. And since that point, I think they only lost to Gateshead and Boreham Wood after that, and it was pretty much wins in every single direction after that. They were just absolutely outstanding. And it's similar to Garrett in the way that obviously the managerial change that they had, but the transition from style of play that the two managers had, because they were very different stylistically. Some of the player changes, obviously, as you mentioned, Stones and Pearce playing together, but also the likes of Jeff King coming back into the side. Obviously, the injury to Fagan-Walcott, as Craig mentioned, and just the defensive solidity that they built up. The fact that for a long period of time they were blowing teams away as they did, with scoring 4 goals through 5 goals, but they were conceding 2s and 3s. And then you think back to the likes of the Hartlepool game where they had to get like a last-minute winner because they conceded 2 goals. Towards the end of the season, when you look at Boston away 1-0, you look at Altrincham away, albeit Altrincham at home, sorry, when they needed the last-minute winner. Yeovil at home when they went and beaten 3-0 and were minutes, seconds away from the title, depending on what went on at Braintree in terms of Rochdale scoring. They were outstanding in terms of how they developed their team throughout the season, and that full credit has to go to Maynard on that. And I think, yeah, as Craig said, I think they're the kind of where Stockport are. They've got the ability to climb through the leagues, not as big as Wrexham, because obviously Wrexham are a different level in terms of the finances, but they're definitely on the path that Stockport are on. And as Craig said, I can see them in League One, in 18 months' time, because they've got such good players, Rolls Royces of players, and they've got players that can score goals, that can create goals, and the likes of Alex Hunt, Hiram Boating, that maybe don't get the shout outs that they deserve. Absolutely outstanding, and it was A's across the board for the players, A's across the board for the managers, A's across the board for the owners. So yeah, it was only right that we gave him an A.
Yeah, definitely. Another player that doesn't get mentioned a lot is Kitchen as well. I think he was outstanding all season as well. Like I say, you could go through the whole squad, like Mark said with Rochdale as well. Like you could go through them all, and they've all been outstanding, and that's why they are where they are. Mark, finally, what do you make of York?
The irresistible force to Rochdale's immovable object, and yeah, were the standard bearers of this league. Both teams were. I mean, York, their starts, because don't forget they had a few games postponed due to some rugby matches being played. But don't disregard what Adam Hinshelwood did for York as well. It may not have ended very well for him, but what he did, he planted the foundations were there for finishing second last year, and it was there. He just had a little problem to solve with Ollie Pearce, Josh Stone. Stuart Maynard came in and he found the solution to that problem. But as you say, Malachi Fagan Walcott, for me, the best defender in the league. Mark Kitchen did it with Oldham, now done it with York. Ollie Banks, the experience of Ollie Banks. Alex Hunt, always reliable. But Pearce and Stones, once they got together, my goodness gracious me, they just battered everybody. Yeah, the goals just flew. But then for every game that they were battering teams, sometimes they had to do what Rochdale did. Do the worker bees, be the worker bees, and actually grind out a result no matter what the time of the game it was. And it was those results, that probably mattered more than a 5-0. 5-0 is wonderful to win. But if you've gone there one each and you get a 95th, 96th minute winner, then it tastes even better because you're getting closer and closer and closer. Stuart Maynard, he's already started. Mark Shelton's joined them from Barnet, which is he knows what it takes to go up in this league. And you've got to sing the praises of Matt and Julianne Ogler. I mean, a board, owners with the belief that how far can they go? It's going to be an absolutely exciting ride for York City fans. Enjoy it, champions to the very last. And yeah, it has been an absolute pleasure watching a promotion battle just go up. An absolute ding-dong battle. It's been brilliant to watch. Two brilliant teams.
Yeah, definitely, and obviously we've had experiences with both sets of fans as well with the podcast, and that it's been an absolute pleasure with them this season as well. They've all been very nice in the comments, and so we will miss them. We hope they might tune in every now and again just to see what the life's like in non-league when they're flying high in League Two next season. But yeah, great season from both the teams that got the A's deserved it. Incredible seasons from them. That's it from us. Bumper episode. I think this is our 100th episode, Craig said as well. So that's why we've done a bumper episode as well. Thanks to Craig, Mark, and Louis as always. If you made it through our bumper episode, well done. If you've just skipped to your team, I also understand as well. But yeah, and obviously we've got lots of player interviews and things as well for you to check out over the next few weeks as well. And yeah, we'll catch up next time. But thanks everyone for watching. Take care, and we'll see you next time.